Good evening, and welcome to the City of Dublin's Architectural Review Board meeting. For those of you who are watching this online, you can visit our meetings at 555 Perimeter Drive. Just a reminder, this meeting is being live streamed, and you can access this meeting and future meetings at the city's website. The meeting procedure for cases this evening will begin with a staff presentation, followed by an opportunity for the applicant to make a presentation. The board will then have the opportunity to ask clarifying questions for staff, then the applicant, and then we'll have time for public comment. After that, the board will then deliberate. We start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if everyone would rise and face the flag. Lori, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Alexander,
Here?
Mr. Cotter,
Here.
Ms. Cooper, and Ms. Damiser.
Here.
Here.
All right, is there a motion to accept the documents in the record and approve the minutes from the meeting held on June 22nd of this year?
I'll move to accept the documents and approve the minutes.
Okay.
I'll second.
Ms. Damiser,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
and Mr. Cotter.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Our board is responsible for the review of construction and modification or alterations to any site in the area subject to architectural review under the provision of the zoning code section 153.170. The board has a decision-making responsibility in these cases. Anyone who intends to address our board this evening must be sworn in. Okay. Please raise your right hand and answer in the affirmative. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth in your testimony to this board? Okay, all right, thank you. All right. This evening, we have one member of our board that is absent, so it will require, for anything to be approved, it will require three of us to vote in the affirmative. So keep that in mind. Our first case is a new case. It's the Dublin pop-up business signs at 63 South High Street. This is a master site plan. The applicant is a request for an installation of a ground sign for an existing tenant space zoned Historic District, Historic South. The site is northwest of the intersection of South High Street with Eberly Hill Lane. Ms. Richard will be our presenter. Madison, looks like you're all set? Okay.
Good evening, board. This case is for review and approval of a master sign plan for a ground sign located at 63 South High Street. The 0.26 acre site is outlined in yellow and is located northwest of the intersection of South High Street and Eberly Hill Lane. The historic 1.5-story home is outlined in blue with the detached garage outlined in orange. The site is surrounded by commercial properties to the north, south, and east with residential properties to the west. The property is zoned Historic South District. For a little bit of background for the board today, in February 2020, the Historic District Task Force went forward with an initiative to improve South High Street vitality. City Manager Dana McDaniel presented to City Council about the leasing opportunity at 63 South High Street with the intent to incorporate rotating vendors and artists to promote vitality and walkability and pedestrian circulation in the area. City Council was supportive of this initiative. So the City of Dublin on July 1st, 2020 signed into a lease at 63 South High Street. The pop-up shops will run from 4 to 8 p.m. on Wednesdays and 1 to 8 p.m. on Saturdays. These hours align with the DORA to encourage further walkability in the area. The ground sign is shown in the location of the yellow star on your screen and will be located east of the existing building, perpendicular to the front facade of the building. The sign is oriented for both pedestrian and vehicular interaction. The proposed signage includes one ground sign for an existing building. The existing house has long been known for its brick red window trim and front door within the district. The red color is carried over to the sign to create a unified look between the existing building architecture and sign. The ground sign will be located 2 feet from the right-of-way. With the existing building footprint as it is currently located, it would be impossible for any proposed ground sign to meet the setback requirement of 8 feet. The sign is at a pedestrian scale, which encourages visual interaction and interactive elements that align with the historic design guidelines. The proposed ground sign is 6 square feet, 3 feet in height, and 2 feet in width, which meets the maximum permitted 8 square foot per code for ground signs in the historic district. The wood frame sign contains durable, high-quality vinyl material letters in Gothic font, which is easily readable for those passing through. The sign has 6 colors: black, white, red, light green, dark green, and the logo, which counts as a color. The middle section of the sign, which will feature specific vendors based on the day and can be easily removed and changed out, but will have consistent coloring and details with each new vendor that comes in. Staff is recommending a condition to change the vendor names on the sign to be black, removing the light green and dark green from that portion of the sign. There are 3 feet 6 inches from grade to the top of the sign due to the foundation posts being 6 inches, which meets the maximum allowed height of 6 feet for ground signs in the historic district. Staff is recommending a condition to change the vendor names on the sign. Staff is recommending a condition that the applicant continue to work with staff on properly screening the exposed ground posts. The applicant has discussed possibly working with our horticulture division and incorporating flowers that are in the planter boxes on the building, further tying the building architecture in with the brick red color and the sign. The ground sign will not be illuminated. Staff has worked alongside the applicant to evaluate other sign options at the street level, which can be outlined on the screen. The ground sign is permanent, meaning it will be up all of the time, while the temporary sandwich board sign would only be up during operational hours, which we found to not encourage people to come in during those hours. And as previously discussed, neither the sandwich board sign nor the proposed ground sign would be able to meet the required setback for either sign. Both signs interact with pedestrian and vehicular traffic, but like I stated previously, the sandwich board sign only does so during operational hours. Both the sandwich board sign and ground sign are limited in the material and color they're allowed to use. However, approval of the master sign plan from the board would permit the vinyl material and would permit the additional colors. All master sign plan criteria is shown and all criteria are found to be met. Lastly, planning staff recommends approval of the proposed master sign plan with the following conditions on your screen and in the staff report. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have, and the applicants are also in attendance with us tonight.
I just had one, the sign is just it's sitting on the ground, right? It's a ground, it's freestanding, sitting on the ground. So it's not there's nothing underneath those, but they'll be, okay, so they'll be buried in the ground and the bottom will kind of be flush with the ground somehow. Okay.
This approval is essentially for 1 year.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
This approval is essentially for just 1 year.
Yes.
The lease period.
One of our conditions is the applicant remove the sign upon the lease ending.
And the lease is going to end in a year, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Do the applicants wish to make a presentation?
Emily Golliver, 6555 Shire Rings Road. Good evening, members of ARB. Like I said, my name is Emily Golliver. I'm a management analyst with the City of Dublin. My colleague Kendall Blake is also with me here tonight. She is another management analyst. And we have been working on Pop-Up Dublin for the last several months. As was stated, Pop-Up Dublin is the result of council action and is one way that we are implementing the recommendations from the Historic District Task Force. It is a rotating retail and art experience, so there will be different vendors at the shop at each date. And at this time, we are planning to run through December, but council will have the ability to extend that through the full length of the lease, which, as you just referred to, is 1 year based on the success. At the core of Pop-Up Dublin is community engagement, and we have a lot of plans to engage with the community, including themed dates. August 3rd and August 6th are Irish themed, coinciding with the Dublin Irish Festival. And then October 1st is harvest themed. That's going to be the official kickoff of fall. And then October 22nd, we will have a sustainability themed date. So we'll be featuring sustainably sourced and eco-friendly products. And then December 14th and 17th will be the holiday themes for people to get that last minute holiday shopping in. But what we're most excited for is the kids only themed dates. Those are going to be December 7th and December 10th. Kids will be able to shop with the help of volunteers without parents to buy presents for their loved ones. And then we'll also have volunteers in the garage for gift wrapping purposes. We've already heard great feedback about this and are considering extending this theme, adding special days, maybe being open on that Thursday and Friday as well. At this time, we have 52 approved vendors signed up. We really think that this initiative is going to help encourage pedestrian traffic along South High Street, and it's our goal to prove that retail can thrive in that area. Some of the pop-up dates will feature acoustic music to increase the draw south of Bridge Street, just getting all of the senses involved. Pop-Up Dublin is the result of heavy involvement and partnership with Visit Dublin, Ohio, the Historic Dublin Business Association, Crawford Hoying, and the Dublin Arts Council. And we really want to just thank them. They've been crucial in getting this off the ground. The last thing that I would add is that we have spoken with the neighbors about this project. On Tuesday, I spent some time out in historic Dublin. I talked to Coast Wine, who actually sent out some unsolicited marketing for us today, so we appreciated that. They're very excited about the value that the pop-up shop will have for their business, since we'll be right next door to them, and we're looking forward to partnering with them. I also went door to door to chat with the residents on the east side of Franklin Street, who are in the immediate vicinity of the pop-up shop, and they were all very excited to see this launch and glad that the city is using this home and maintaining its historical value. It was also a great experience personally for me because I got to learn more about the history of the property and hear some stories about Mrs. Richards, specifically the tomato plants that she was known for out back. The sign design before you tonight is our way of paying homage to Mrs. Richards. We had heard that she is well known for the red geraniums in the window boxes around the house. The residents that I spoke to on Tuesday were very happy to hear that we've already planted red geraniums in the window boxes, along with some other flowers, of course, but that we're bringing that piece of history back to the home. And the red on the sign, it's really just in relation to the red flowers as well as the red trim, as you saw in the picture, the red trim. And I grew up in Dublin, and that's how I know the house is the red trim on it. But thank you for the opportunity to talk to you a little bit more about Pop-Up Dublin and what we're doing. This sign, with us only being open 2 days a week, it's going to be really critical for us to draw that organic interest from pedestrians and drivers and help make it successful. And we are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Board members, any questions?
Maybe just one thing for me, there are two questions. One on lighting, because certainly as you go toward Christmas, it'll be dark at whatever, 5 o'clock. So what was the reason for not going with some sort of temporary lighting in front of the sign also? Because if it extends in January, it'll also be dark. So what was your thought to not have it illuminated? Yeah,
that's a good question. I think that a lot of our conversations were just around the temporary nature of the sign, but we can definitely look into lighting. And I don't know if there's a requirement to come back if we do that, but towards the end of the year, we can certainly come back and add that component to it.
And then the second one for me, it's really about the colors, because certainly I understand the red. So you have white, black, red, and green, right? So couldn't have take the green out or something. Just trying to understand, because certainly on our side, just trying to understand really, I mean, I get the red, but why you couldn't have made it red and incorporated a different way? Because certainly I'd say many people who would come in, we would really push them to 3 to try to be inside the normal standard that we would have. So just give me some thought, just so I can try to understand why you said, okay, I couldn't use red in a different place or a different way and take out a different color.
Yeah, I think that we really just wanted to push for the red. It's very outside of city of Dublin to go for a red. But we really wanted to push for it to pay that homage to the historical, that it's known for that red trim. I think that we're not opposed at all to removing the red around the sign, to bring it within the 3 required. But it was really just to kind of coincide with how the house looks and have that visual appeal.
And for me, the green needs to stay, right? Dublin, so just try to make sure that as you thought through this, I'm not trying to, I think the sign looks nice, but for me, we just had to try to rationalize why you couldn't, either putting the red as a different spot or taking the green out or one of the other colors out.
Yeah, I think the green was important for us, just being, as you said, the city of Dublin, having that consistency with our brand, this being a City of Dublin initiative. But again, we are willing to remove the red from the surrounding part. Are you referring to the red that's on the borders, or?
Well, I'm referring, I'm referring to the 4th color, whether it's the red or the green or the
Yeah.
black and white. It's really it's the 4th color that we've really pushed most of the applicants to make sure they stayed inside.
Yeah,
Trying to-
I would say too that this is our first ARB application and we didn't know that the logo counted for a color. So we may have thought that we were within the rules, but we're willing to work with whatever the board is advisable to.
What's your time frame? Because you're opening almost immediately, right?
Saturday.
Yeah, so
Yes.
has the sign been fabricated?
No, we'll just be there on Saturday. We won't have a sign prepared or anything yet by then, but we will. We do have a sign shop in-house at the City of Dublin, so we have the ability to. Next week they're a little busy, but as we all are. But after the Irish Festival, we'll have their attention and be able to get that sign put in pretty quickly.
Okay.
And they do the install of the signs as well. So all the street signs and stuff, that's our sign shop.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Did we have, Madison, do we have any public comment coming back to us regarding this?
No, we don't have any public comment at this time.
Okay, all right. For the rest of you, just from my experience, having been on the board for a little while, we did grant some flexibility, the sign, and it was basically the same term. It was for 1 year, and it was for the Toy Emporium. They had a non-conforming sign. They'd actually installed it, and because of the circumstances there, we did allow them to keep the non-conforming sign for a year. So the term would be the same that we're talking about here. So it seems the request is similar in that it's a request for a sign that doesn't quite conform with the code. Thoughts about it? Sean, you feel strongly that it should go to 3 colors?
No, I just want to make sure we think through, because certainly for me, a condition would have to be that it only lasts 1 year, right? I mean, the lease could get renewed, right? So somehow I think we have to be super clear that if this is very successful, when you end up saying, hey, this is the best thing ever, if I would agree, I'd say that has to be a condition that the sign, what would we call it, a non-conforming sign would need to be clear that we would have to do something else. I'm not, as I say, I think as long as we phrase it in a way that we understand why we're putting it in and why we're going to take it down, I can be okay, because I think it's great. I've been to Costa, and I know there's certainly on the south side of the Bridge Street, there are some concerns about people going in that area. So I think putting something in there is really good. But I just want to make sure that we're, because it certainly will come up again that we see a 4th color. And why do we make sure that we don't, from a board standpoint, that we're clear that there's a reason why we did this and we don't want to extend it to a different place.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the board, we have a condition prepared for this circumstance that Mr. Cotter's brought up, and we'd be happy to share that with you for consideration.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that would.
Marty, you okay with that?
Yeah. Yes, I'm fine with that. One of the questions I have is, we do have it in the conditions that it'll be limited to 4, correct? And were you okay with that?
Yes, yes, the lettering, is that what you're referring to?
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely.
Any thoughts, Hillary?
I was just going to say that actually, and I don't have the history with the board, so I'm a little bit, I'd like us to be consistent, so I look to you guys to tell me what the history is. But I actually like the red border because it does bring out the historic nature of the house and why it's other reasons for it to be important to Dublin. And of course, the green, the brand is important as well. So I understand the four colors, and I actually think they help the situation. The other parts of it not being conforming, the setback and all of that are made up for the fact that the sign itself, the artistry of it makes sense.
Have you seen you've probably reviewed the other four conditions?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
You've probably reviewed the other four conditions?
Yes, yes.
If we vote on those, I want to make sure that you understand them, you're comfortable with them.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about both this condition as well, that if we were to extend this beyond the 1-year lease, that we would seek out a more permanent sign design that is more consistent with what else is in historic Dublin. And the rest of the conditions, we're already planning in our heads the black lettering on that removable portion of the sign. So,
Okay. Is there a motion to approve this with the 5 conditions?
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Damisar.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
thank you very much, and I hope to see you guys on Saturday, 1 to 8, for our first day.
Okay. All right, our second case this evening is development plan at 3638 North High Street. This is a preliminary development plan. The application is a request for the construction of a 2-story mixed-use building and a 2-story residential building on a 0.25 acre lot, zoned historic district, historic core. The site is northeast of the intersection of North High Street and Wing Hill Lane. Ms. Holt will be our presenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everyone. This is actually 3 separate requests. As you've mentioned, Mr. Chairman, we have for 3638 North High Street, a preliminary development plan, a parking plan, and some waivers for your review tonight. And as you mentioned, the site is located between North High Street, Wing Hill Lane, and North Riverview Street. And the wall and privy and stair system is identified by the blue star on the screen. The site is zoned historic district, historic core, and it's surrounded by the same zoning except on the east side where we have historic residential. The development history for this project started in October of 2021, and that began with an informal review where the key goal was to retain views to the preserved historic wall, privy, and stairs. Building height and massing were discussed at length at that hearing. And then the next step occurred in March of 2022, where this board heard a concept plan and demolition request. Both of those were approved with a condition of approval that the demolition needed to physically wait until the final development plan was fully approved. The concept plan had conditions which have been met with the current application. So again, tonight we're looking at the preliminary development plan, a parking plan, and some waivers. These are the existing conditions at both the front and the back of the buildings. That lower left photo shows you the historic wall, the steps, and the privy. These photos show more detail along North High Street and Wing Hill Lane. Pointing out some highlights for the proposed site plan, here are the stone wall stairs and privy being preserved. The mixed-use building is along North High Street, and the square footage amount has been refined with this application. The residential building is along North Blacksmith Lane, again with the square footage refined. The parking is throughout the site, and a change here from the concept plan is that there is tuck-under parking for the residential building. A public ADA parking spot is located on North High Street. We have bike parking in the northwest corner, and I'll be talking about a parking plan in a few slides. The applicant is also proposing to add sidewalks along Wing Hill Lane and North Blacksmith Lane, and the trash locations are on the north side of the property as shown. This is the character for North High Street, looking both directions. This is north and south along the street, so we're looking at the mixed-use building. Getting into the details for the elevations for this building, looking at the North High elevation, a change since concept plan is that we now have horizontal siding on the north portion. The windows are linked using vertical details with materials that match the surrounding materials. An eave has been added on to the gabled portion, and the gabled building has awnings along the first floor. Looking at the Wing Hill elevation, you'll note that the off-site stairs that encroached into Wing Hill Lane have been removed. And please note the Juliet balcony, which is the subject of a waiver request, and we will talk about that in more detail in a bit. The interior or east elevation for this building shows an integration of the existing historic stone wall system and the foundation for this building. And then a rear access door with an awning, and again, the eave details. The north elevation shows windows grouped together and a rear deck and access. Materials for the mixed-use building include a rusticated limestone veneer for the foundation and the water tables, brick in Belden Yukon blend for the south portion of the building, smooth limestone cladding for window details and vertical elements, horizontal wood siding in sage green light for the north portion, standing seam metal roof in gunsmith gray, and aluminum clad windows and doors from Marvin or similar. Moving on to the residential building, this is the proposed character along North Blacksmith Lane. Looking at some highlights along North Blacksmith, we see again the change to horizontal siding, balconies in more traditional forms, recessed entries, vertical details to organize the window groupings, and the eaves as shown on the mixed-use building as well. On the north elevation, we see the stepped water table and the vertical details organizing the windows. Looking at the interior elevation, we see the tuck-under garage doors for the parking, and again, the vertical organization of the windows. And then on the south elevation, the stepped water table and those vertical details. The proposed materials for the residential building are similar to those for the mixed-use building. We see the same limestone for the water table. The horizontal siding is shown in grapey and pavestone, and accents in Roycroft, Adobe, and Randolph Gray. And staff is supportive of perhaps a body color in the Roycroft Adobe for some greater visual interest. The standing seam metal roof is the same in the Gunsmith Gray, and the aluminum clad windows are the same also with Marvin or similar. Moving on to the parking plan, 44 total parking spaces are required for this site. 10 are provided, as we've seen before. So 34 are requested to be off-site. Available to the project within the 600-foot radius is 50% of the library garage, which equates to approximately 181 spaces that are potentially available. And then there are 103 spaces potentially available at the Darby lot, and that number, 103, has been updated as of yesterday with some work from Transportation and Mobility. That is the number. Staff supports the parking plan. So moving into the waiver criteria, the request here is for lot coverage to allow 90% where 85% is the maximum permitted in this zone district. All criteria are met or not applicable, and staff does support this waiver request. The second waiver request is for the Juliet balcony. Code requires these balconies to be installed at the second story or above. This proposal location is at approximately 1.5 stories. It is added to provide visual interest along Wing Hill Lane. And here we see its location both in plan view and in elevation. Staff does support this waiver request. Looking at the criteria for this request, all criteria are met or not applicable. The third waiver is for no foundation plantings along Wing Hill Lane where they are required by code. There is limited space per the building placement, and staff believes that the request is offset by the installation of ornamental trees shown in green and the sidewalk installation along Wing Hill Lane. So staff supports this request as well. And for this particular waiver, the criteria have all been met or are not applicable. And finally, regarding the preliminary development plan itself, the criteria are met with conditions and or waivers and or the parking plan. And this is all fully discussed in the planning report. So moving to the recommendations, staff is recommending approval of the parking plan and the 3 waivers as noted. And we are recommending approval of the preliminary development plan with the conditions as shown here and as noted in the planning report. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Sarah, one clarification I think is important for everybody is that potentially, right now, there are a lot of conditions. And as we go through this, the project could still move forward even if we don't approve everything that's on this list tonight, or even if we add to this list. So we don't have to look at this as all or one. We look at each issue. It still would provide an opportunity for the applicants to move forward to the next phase, even if we should choose to differ from the recommendations in some way. So I just want to make that clear, because in the past we've tried to create a vehicle for people to keep moving forward on the projects, even if there are things that we have some maybe some different feelings about. So, okay. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Anybody have additional questions for Sarah?
Just clarifying, because I didn't write down, what's the lot coverage now on the lot? Somehow I didn't put that in today's. Was it in the report? I don't remember. It was not? Do you know what it is?
Perhaps the applicant can answer that.
Well, and then the other, just if you go back to the trash, because I had one, just if I can just visualize, 'cause I didn't write that down, but the trash on the north side, how does it get to the trash truck? Just, I'm just trying to look at which way it goes, just, maybe it's the applicant can ask it.
You want to save that for the
It
applicant?
could be, I was just trying to make sure, we can save it for the applicant, just have,
I
try to
can,
visualize that enclosure, but I'll wait for the applicant to tell, it's okay.
I can help explain that, and then maybe the applicant can elaborate. If you remember, the site is really on two different levels. So what is proposed for the trash for the mixed-use building is on the same level as North High Street.
Yep.
So the idea is to roll it out towards North High Street. And then for the residential building, that's obviously on the lower level, and it would be rolled out towards North Blacksmith.
Okay. Part of the gravel drive is that shared, is it, maybe I'll ask the applicant too, is the gravel drive shared? The one between the buildings, existing gravel drive?
That is for 40 North High Street,
Right.
the dentist, and that is actually partly on this lot.
Okay.
Yeah, can we go back to that figure?
Oh, sure.
I have some issues as well with the trash enclosure as depicted. First of all, I wasn't aware that there would be any trash collection allowed on High Street. I was under the understanding that all the trash collection is done either in the alleys or behind on Blacksmith Lane. So, or behind the existing building. And I don't think, since we know that this building has been proposed for a possible restaurant and offices, that 96-gallon trash cans is going to be adequate. But also, just looking at the renderings, where would they sit? Because that gravel drive is not part of the applicant's property, just a little piece of it. And the front of the building would be significantly impacted by wheeling trash cans out there every week or a couple times a week, depending on the nature of the business and the need for ongoing trash removal. So I really don't see how this will work. I also have a problem with the fact that it basically is sitting immediately adjacent to the historic staircase and privy. So it seems like it takes away from highlighting the historic nature of that part of the property.
The applicant will probably be up in 2 seconds. And so we'll let them, I'm sure they've got, and any other issues you might have from them. It's probably not fair to ask Sarah to answer that question. And maybe the applicant can better answer that.
I guess my one observation, though, was I wasn't aware that the city of Dublin had trash collection along North High Street.
That would be a question. Okay, I stand corrected. All right. Do you know the city of Dublin's trash collection policy?
I do not know what happens along North High Street, and we can certainly look into that at the next stage.
Okay. I'm sure we're going to have more questions for you. Applicant, would one of you like to come up and speak?
Good evening. My name is Tim Lai with Tim Lai Architect. The address is 401 West Town Street, Columbus. And we have a couple landscape architects and civil engineer. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Wes Davis with Osborne Engineering, 10792 Bellflower Drive.
And Phil Moorhead, I'm the landscape architect, G2 Planning and Design, 720 East Broad Street, Columbus, Ohio, 43215.
You want to just tell us a little more about the project? We know it's changed since you were here last.
Yes. Well, thank you again, spending time being here and looking at our projects. So the project, as usual, as we dig into it a little bit deeper with a lot of technical requirements and everything, did drive actually, the design. And sometimes design is, part of it's aesthetic, part of it is actually technical requirement, part of it is just practicality. So I guess I'm sure that you guys would have some question about the elevations and all that later, and then we can talk about the trash, real quick. But I before we start, I think I just want to say that one of the things I think it was probably talked about in the, maybe not exactly in the report that Sarah just gave. By the way, thank you, Sarah. You did a wonderful job and really helping us along this process. Really appreciate that. But one of the main change, really, there's a few things I would say that really changed something. And obviously, we're trying to address some of the comments that we received back in March, even though it feels like a long time ago. So one of the things, for example, that if you remember, we had a door on that coming out with a stoop on Wing Hill Lane. We try to push the building service folks and say, hey, we have one there. Can we keep that? Because it's part of the, part of the building, part of the history, and they just can't accept that. So we have to kind of step back and kind of eliminate that entry, and so that's why you see there's still the biggest window, on that spot, and we added the Julian balcony there to kind of acknowledge that, that's used to be an entry there. The other thing you notice is from that point, the other thing you notice is the window is quite a bit smaller on that side, on the south side. And the reason for that is because, the size of our building doesn't really require a sprinkler system for the fire suppression. However, it does put limits on our window opening on the commercial side, on the mixed-use building side. So you can see there, we kind of maximize every square inches of the allowable opening, which on the Wing Hill side on the south is 15% of the wall, and on the north side is only 10% because it's closer to our neighbors on the north side. And so that's why you can see those two elevations, the windows, it's changed. It's quite a bit smaller, and so we devise a different strategy in terms of how to organize the facade and the elevations and the overall kind of aesthetic of our projects, and so that's why you see those vertical elements in there, which we feel is an important feature for this kind of revision that we did. It served a few purposes, really. The first thing is that it really create a regularized rhythm that we feel like is important to establish the building, and still allow some kind of variation of the window sizes, because we do have to have different window sizes for different practical reasons. For example, as you can see, the first floor towards the east side, the window gets smaller because that's kind of the back of the house for the restaurant. And it doesn't make sense to have the same size of window as the front. The front need more windows, where the customer is, and it need more light. And so, so that's why you see that. But then the vertical lines really kind of help, create that rhythm, create that regularity, and still allow certain kind of flexibility of how we do that. And I think last time we talked a little bit about the window trim. Feel like I just keep talking, but this side of the building, we still feel like that corner on High Street and Wing Hill is really the kind of the focal point of this whole proposal. And we really try to elevate that. You know, we really try to bring different elements together. That it is a commercial building. It is a 2-story building. It is. It has a history of stone. You know, the Wing Hill family, the Wing family, a big part of the family is Mason. Like they were Mason at one point. Before then, they have, you know, livery, you know, animal have barns on our site. So we want to bring some of those kind of stone, the masonry, kind of agricultural elements, you know, to kind of represent, you know, in this building in a kind of dignified way that is, you know, that is not a mimic of a historic style, but it's definitely sympathetic to the scale, the shape, the material, you know, and the scale, you know, of the district and the history of that. So that's kind of like set the whole project. And then you go around it, you have a smaller addition at the back there, and the massing, as you notice, we kind of squeeze them a little bit. We shift that a little bit on the east side, because we realized that, you know, after we're looking at the use and you know, our clients start talking to different potential tenants, and we really think that we need to have a clean separation, just like what we have now, really. You know, we have a gallery now, and then we have a salon. You know, for this one, we're probably going to have a quick serve restaurant on the south side, and then we'll have probably a bakery or some sort on the north side. And so that shift at the back on the east elevation allowed the exit for trash and loadings and everything for that south unit, right? Without it, you can't really do that. You have to, you know, go through, you know, the north side of the building at the back and create, you know, a hallway or some sort. So that way we kind of create that really practical way to get out on that side, and also actually create a slightly more interesting, you know, elevation than before, when I think one of the comments was it was a little too flat last time. So, and then as you go around that, you know, that vertical elements that is stone, you know, with a kind of a limestone color brick, becomes a wood siding on the north side. And we want to continue that vocabulary to say, okay, even though they're two different material completely, but we want to kind of create an identity and a motif, you know, for the building. And so we use different kind of timber elements, actually different sizes, to create those lines with different rhythm. And then the window, as you can see, is quite a bit smaller on the upper floor, but you know, that's all we got for 10%. And then the 10% on the lower floors, we only have that for that front storefront at the base, which I think that's probably the most effective way to use the space, because if you look at one of the rendering, if you walk down the street from the north on the south, you just can't really see much past that storefront, especially on the first floor with the building, with our neighbor, like right there. You can kind of see that. You can't really see much when you walk down the street until you get really, really close to that, looking down that driveway. So that's that one. The coloration of the color, I know that's, you know, Sarah has been urging us to use some bright color. You know, color is subjective, obviously. We were looking through the catalog of the pre-approved, you know, historic Dublin paint colors. There's actually quite a bit of them, but we try to pick something that is a little bit subtle. We want this addition to be obviously new, but at the same time it's a respectful addition to the neighborhood. It's not necessarily trying to jump out. The things that jump out would be the little detail, the little things that obviously you may not expect, and those are things that, you know, we try to create that little sense of discovery, if you will. Going back to, to the residential, I think one of the main comment last time that we had, as if you remember, is that we have this big cut, at the corner on the second floor. And so, we go into this revision, we know that we are not expected to see that, right? So, and then at the same time, again, a lot of these things is aesthetic and then functional, So one of the things that is changed is that we create a 2-car garage for each of these units, which really greatly improve the values and for this unit, what it could be from the end user standpoint. It's going to be really inconvenient and really hard to justify how much they're going to pay to live here if you don't have a garage. So we thought, okay, well, it would be a good idea to put the garage at the back. So we have 2-car garage. Well, once you put the 2-car garage in a house, as you can realize, for a small footprint like this, you don't have much space left with the rest of the floor plate. And so we have, basically put a bedroom on the first floor with a vestibule and the stair go up. And then most of the living space is actually on the second floor. So what you see here is that facing east, you have the living room with a balcony there, and then will be open kitchen dining, and then the bathroom will be behind it. So it's a 2-bedroom basically. It's a 2-bedroom unit with a really nice cathedral ceiling on the second floor. It's really spacious, and so that's what you see here is that the balcony become just fairly smaller than what we talked about obviously last time, which is kind of out of practical reason, but also I think it works out with the elevation and things that we talked about last time. So we did a lot of little tweak things that to kind of address some of the comment that you guys had last time. But I'm sure that you'll have more. Now going back to the sorry, I think I sit down. So going back to the trash. So Martha, I know that you have comment about the trash. So do you guys want to talk about it, or do you want me to talk about it? I don't know. I mean, it's up to you guys, because it's kind of, the site part of the work. But do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, the trash aspect of this site, I mean, we worked with Sarah and then the team. It's been a tricky operation, just considering what the use is going to be for the multi-use building and how that's going to operate and where's the best place to locate the trash. And then Mrs. Cooper brought it up that the gravel lot to the north, the dentist property, does encroach on our property to the south a hair. So it's difficult then to provide the dumpster location just north of the mixed-use building. And then other constraints on the site, considering the privy location and the historic wall, has made it somewhat difficult to locate those dumpsters. So this is, we were starting north of that mixed-use building along North High Streets, where we first kind of started thinking about where we're going to put this trash, but then didn't start to mitigate over to the west there. And we'll certainly look into what the trash pickup is with Dublin, and we'll work through that when we move on in this process to make sure that we're accommodating that. But it also does accommodate kind of the functionality of what that multi-use building is going to be.
Will Dublin pick up non-residential trash? Do you need to actually have an independent? And Mr. Lombardi, you may know from your current use of the building, does Dublin pick it up, or do you have to hire? Yeah, so it probably won't be Dublin. It'll be somebody they contract out with. But I think knowing Dublin's policy about whether it's allowed on the street, I was just following on Marty's comment, looking at the grade on that south elevation, on that north elevation, looking at your elevation and thinking about if somebody has a fully loaded dumpster and they're trying to push it up, and they're pushing up gravel. You're the engineer, but it doesn't look all that. It looks like there could be some challenges there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a good point with the grade for this site. It's been a challenge for the site related that we have a 20-foot drop from North High Street all the way down to Blacksmith Lane. So definitely a challenge in terms of the dumpsters, in terms of the site grading and the kind of the site configuration as well. fitting in the parking lot between the townhomes and then the multi-use building along North High Street certainly has been a challenge. And then we're still working through those details as we move forward.
Board members, other questions for the applicants?
Just
Go, any,
just dive into.
sure, just
whatever.
dive in.
I looked at looking at the parking, so the parking between the buildings. So just trying to understand, I mean, it looks like you did all the, I don't know how big the car was. I couldn't figure it didn't look like I had a good scale. But that looks to be a bit of a challenge. And how it feels like we're building the problem inside of there that, have people bumping into each other and potential for people bumping into each other and not being very happy. So is there, the reason you put the 5 spots on the, like I said, it'd be on the west side. So you're just trying to maximize how many spaces you put in there to fit inside the parking plans. I mean, the reason you put those 5 in there is specifically for that.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. We can talk a bit amongst ourselves about that when we get there. Okay. So it was only it was for trying to fulfill the parking plan that Dublin, just trying to put as many spaces you can on the lot.
Correct. That's our intent.
All right.
Correct.
Have you considered putting the waste facility on the parking lot area, but there to the north end, north of the townhouse, but
You're saying where it bumps out there.
or bumps out around the privy and the wall?
Yeah, I think that we need to utilize that for the townhomes garage so that person can maneuver out of there. I think that's the reasoning for that. And if we put the dumpster there, that would impede their ability to get out of there.
And maybe now I'm switching gears again. I'm just going down my list. Lot coverage. Do you know what the lot coverage is today? The lot coverage.
The existing?
What the Bit City would consider the lot coverage right now.
We'll be able to, not off the top of my head right now, but we can provide that to the board. I think it's like sub 60%, but I'll have to clarify.
60%?
About 60%.
Because there's nothing on the back of it.
Yeah, one of the questions I have about that particular waiver is when you read the language of that first clause, that the staff report says you're in compliance. However, when I read that language, to me, that language is language that's typically used for zoning variances. And it says that if we could have, I don't have the list in front of me, but the actual portion of the staff report that has the item 1 and it shows the language, because it's typically for conditions that are imposed upon you. What I think is unusual for me in this lot coverage request is you have a clean slate. You control what's going on in that site. Why do you need to exceed the 85%? It's actually the language in version 1, and with 3 lawyers up here, you may have a different interpretation.
Only 2 lawyers and an engineer.
Does anybody have a paper copy of the staff report? I'll read it.
I don't have one. Yeah.
Okay. Because I think when I read that language, this doesn't seem to meet the standards so far. Nothing we've heard in the presentation, I think meets those standards. So I'm curious, 85 is huge in terms of covering a piece of property.
Right. Now, the 85, just to clarify, is not the building, but also all the non-pervious service. And so, I think currently, we don't have the actual number, but if you actually look at the site right now, it's majority of it is gravel, pave, and they have a little bit of landscape planting area kind of just east of the building right now, which we're keeping all of them. And we're adding a few more. We're adding a lot of landscape along the sidewalks and then also on the east edge where the new townhome is going to be. So in a way, I think the reality is that we are improving the coverage from what it currently is. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, yes, 85% is a number, but our site is incredibly small in a historic district, and obviously that has a lot of limitation of what we can do. But if that becomes a sticking point, obviously we can explore pervious paving, in some area to potentially meet that criteria. But
Well, our criteria and the one clause, it goes through and then it says, or other circumstances outside the control of the owner leasing. So it's really written with it's written the way I see a lot of zoning language is written, that you have an unusual site or you have something imposed on you as a result of the site, a building that's a really difficult building to work around. But since you have the clean site, you control that. I'm a little worried when we go beyond 85%, as well, the heat island effect that we create, even though you may control the runoff, but all the heat that this radiates, 85 is pretty big. And you're now adding another floor. You're now adding units in the back. So you're making a choice. And that's fine, and to significantly increase the density on that. But, we have this limit that I'm a little worried about. And the gravel, I know there's one community that doesn't count gravel in their calculations. However, that gravel is probably going to have a liner underneath it. So water is not going to percolate through that gravel. So it is going to work like an impervious surface. So I just am a little, I just want a compelling reason why we can't get it down to 85. Permeable pavers, there's a maintenance issue with those that, they're only as good as the maintenance is to keep them permeable. So that's why I want to know why you need to go. Can you get it down to 85?
can I get to 85? Is the question. It's possible, definitely. We figured it, we asked, to see if we can do that. But because like you said, permeable paver also have some maintenance, concern that we might have, they look good when you first install it and then it goes downhill from there. So, we kind of have mixed feeling about that.
I'm not suggesting you use those. I just was referencing your comment. So I have a couple other, since everybody else is slow to ask questions. I went back and looked at the language when you came before us. And one of the conditions of approval was that, and you brought up briefly, obliquely, the window trims. And one of the conditions of approval last time is that the window trims would be more like traditional window trims. And so I don't quite see that yet. I understand the design rationale of trying to order the elevation when the windows aren't doing that for you. So I understand the design rationale. And the building on the right, it begins to look like traditional trim boards that you might see on the brazen head, or the way you're using the cut stone on that elevation. But as we move to the left and the buildings in the back, for me, and other board members may feel differently, it's hard to see that as and our code, I don't want to, it's right here in the code. I mean, it says we need to have windows and doors should be framed in materials that are similar in scale and character with other buildings. So I just have a little bit of heartburn seeing how that meets the spirit of the code.
That's a good question, Gary. And I do have put a lot of thought in this because I know you'll ask that question. And I know this is a sensitive issue in Dublin. So here's the thing. When we read the code, there are actually two parts of it. So the part that you talk about, that talks about that it needs to be consistent with the neighboring building. The other part of the code, actually, that talk about detailing, architectural details. And it says that the architectural detail should be a modern interpretation of historic style and not a replication. And now that's one part of that. And so I guess what we're trying to convey here is that we are not, and I told you last time, I think, we are not trying to create a historic building here. We're not building a historic building here. And obviously, we want to create something that is appropriate, that's consistent, that actually makes sense as a whole. And so when we look at everything, you know, we feel like, and on top of that, let's add to that. Our neighboring building to the north is it's considered to be contributing to the historic Dublin in a modern style. And if you look at their window treatment, they're definitely not traditional. And so we're facing them. And I think we are definitely more traditional than they are, right? I mean, to be fair. And so, you know, I mean, that's how kind of we want you guys to think about that. We are not, I don't think it would be as successful as a project to try to force, you know, some of these traditional elements into a building that, again, we are trying to be sympathetic to the context and the scale and the material of the district, which obviously I believe we demonstrate that. And I think, you know, the window is something that, because we have so many different sizes, when we're starting to make them into, like, you know, 2/2 or 6/6, it doesn't really work the way that we see the elevation. And so, you know, that's probably, you know, how we come up with that. And so anyway, that's how I see it. But we do put a lot of thoughts in that. It's not just putting in there for.
Oh, I know there's a lot of thought, but but okay. I do appreciate, don't worry, we're not discounting thought. Any other comments? Marty, you have any comments?
I think I'm still really concerned about the configuration of the internal parking and the adequate waste facilities, and adding some, it seems like if you reduce the size to get within the 85%, you might be able to find some of the permeable areas that you need on the north side of the building and move the waste disposal facilities for the commercial building to the parking area below.
So Martha, let me point out something. So if you remember last time when we were here, we have 5 parking on the west side of the parking lot, and then we put 2 parallel parking on the other side of the lot. And we realized that was just too tight. Okay. Now, what we did is that we get rid of those two parallel parking spot. We actually recessed the parking into the garage. So if you look at the site plan, I don't know if we have a mention on it. Now, Dublin standard, if you design a parking, 9-degree parking, is 19 feet deep by 9 foot wide for 1 parking spot. And the drive aisle on 2-way is 22 feet. I believe we have a lot more than 22 feet. I think we probably have 26 feet at least on our quote unquote drive aisle, even though it feels like it's just one side because the other side is the garage. But in reality, they are actually wider than the standard, the development standard for parking. Now the only thing that we want to look at a little bit is when it comes back out, and especially on the last spot on the north side. That seems to be a little tight, but part of it because we have a privy there, and the historic stair that obviously we can't use that for that space. But I think that's one of the things that we were talking about internally to see, and I think that's one of the comments from the city, from the engineering folks, to make sure that we got enough maneuvering space for that last spot in our parking.
Yeah, the maneuverability, I appreciate that, but I still am not comfortable with the way the trash enclosure for a commercial building is proposed. And particularly since we have the need to, or perhaps have the need to get the percent occupant, the area, I'm saying it wrong, but down to 85% coverage, that might be an area where you can find some space that would be greened up, if you will, because that would be right by the historic feature. It would help with runoff from the building right there on the north side.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, even if, and I'm only one opinion here, but if you lost another spot, I would be more receptive to the fact that you addressed a proper trash disposal enclosure for a commercial, particularly a restaurant, than having the one additional space. You're already seeking a waiver for parking. So to me, that's a big thing. I just don't see how you're going to, it looks like to me a recipe for disaster to have 6 96-gallon tubs being wheeled out to High Street to be picked up, which probably is not even feasible. It's probably not even something you can do from a waste disposal contract basis.
Right.
Excuse me, Mr. Lombardi, would you identify yourself? And
Yeah, Bob Lombardi, 4912 Passara Way, Dublin, 43017.
thank you.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think that North High Brewing has the 96-gallon trash bins, and quite a few of them. Because I was looking at them, I said, man, if they can get by with 5 or 6, then certainly we could. But I'll check on that and see how they get rid of their trash. But I'm pretty sure they have that.
But they don't take them out to High Street to be disposed.
I think they do, because they actually are on the other side of LaPierre's. I'm not 100% sure. I'll check into it, but they're on the other side of LaPierre's property. I'll check into it. I'm just saying that I saw a bunch of those 96-gallon bins, and I'm figuring, that's a pretty big restaurant, 2-story restaurant and bar. So they do it. So I'll ask them how they do it and provide that information if you'd like. Do you want that information?
Well, I think in terms of how it is managed and the aesthetic for the historic district is important. That it should be concealed, it should not be intrusive to the adjacent properties. And frankly, if it's wheeled out front, it's going to take away from your porch dining area, That's probably maybe more of an aesthetic concern, but
Typically that's done in the morning, and, there's not customers around, and it's going to be on the north side, which is the bakery, and there's not a patio out front of the bakery. But I'll check into that and see if I can get that information for you.
a bakery now, but you don't know forever.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. But it doesn't have the outside seating.
Marty, maybe we can take this as a discussion about, because I have the same feeling, maybe we cut down these parking and see what the parking.
Yeah, that's what I
Maybe
feel.
the parking, maybe we should discuss the parking waiver and see if there's a better way, right? To make it easier for the.
Well, maybe, and a question along with that is what drove the decision to put 5 spaces there?
Yeah, I mean, Martha, I totally understand what you're saying. I mean, the trash is a very challenging, problem, for this site. I mean, we have no problem to take out one of the parking downstairs if it works better. The problem with that is that there's no easy access to go down there. I mean, we're talking about, at least 10 feet, if not more, that you need to go down that stair, that historic stair that we cannot touch, that is not technically safe to use. And so that would be my biggest concern, is that we can put it out there, but we have no safe, no safe way to actually access that from the restaurant all the way up there. Now, remember that the restaurant come out to that little, let's call it a little, walkway. It has to come down a few steps already to go to the dumpster that we propose. Now we have to go down even further to the parking, which again, I understand from access for the dumps, from the trash collection standpoint, it's probably better. But for the occupants to have to come down those stairs in the snow and the ice, it's gonna be very challenging for them to do. So I'm just saying, it's a difficult problem. We'll look at that again to see how we can minimize the concern that we have, and I'm sure that that we definitely would come back with maybe a better solution. But I'm just telling you, that's a lot of challenge for us to figure that out.
I did look at one of the drawings, and it did indicate there's about 29 feet between the parking and the face of the residential structure, which is more than what you normally have in 2 aisles. The only challenge is when you have 8 or 9 foot doors, and I couldn't tell from the drawing whether those garage doors are 8 or 9 feet, is the tendency is to try to come in slightly diagonally. If they were a double door, I'm not an advocate of the aesthetic. Double door makes it a lot easier to make that turn in there, but I think the scale of what you're proposing is better, but I think that's the only hesitation I have about that. It's just, as somebody's trying to, because ideally you'd want to come straight in these small spots.
I mean, if you come from the west and you try to park if you're going east and try to park back west, it's a nightmare. Or you make the road one way, then the other people have a problem. I mean,
I hear you.
Park my 20-foot truck in there, probably won't fit. Just.
I agree on
no
your
pickup truck allowed.
observation
Exactly.
about having a double door versus 2 single doors would give you some grace. I have 2 single doors and a big curve to come out of. It's very difficult, so.
Yeah, I believe we are proposing a double door 16 feet wide. So with 2 double door. So one for each unit.
It sounds like the remediation for the stone wall is yet to be fully worked out.
So the stone wall remediation is actually probably going to happen earlier than what we would like, because it is literally collapsing. And we did find out the root cause of that. I don't know if you guys are interested to hear about that. So what happened was that the stone wall, if you recall, the biggest problem is that there's a big crack, kind of that developed, probably about a year or 2 ago, about 3 feet, kind of when you turn that wall, like from the privy, you go east, right, and then you turn north, okay, to our neighbor's property. About 3 feet, there's a crack right there, okay. So we're like, what the heck? Why is that? And then beyond that, there's no problem. I mean, they're fine. So we have our engineer go out, and then we study the whole thing. And what happened was that our neighbor's parking was graded to slope to our side, from north to south. So all the stormwater over the year just come over our wall, essentially, on our north, kind of the north side of our site, but it's south of them, basically, including their roof drain. They go all the way to the end of our wall and just daylight out and just dumping tons of water, and that's why that wall is basically collapsing as we speak. So we talked to our engineer. It's not. It's not the end of the world. It takes some time. It takes some work that we need to do. So the proposed solution is actually we would basically take down the block, not the block, the stone, piece by piece, and then we're gonna rebuild it. Basically, we just restacked it, but then we are gonna put what we call it self-compacting gravel, which is kind of like a small pea gravel, basically. as we go up. So we basically rebuild the wall and then we fill up the gravel. Now, before we do that, we'll have a drain. We'll actually have a drain at the bottom that would be able to let the water out when the water come down to the bottom instead of like holding it at the bottom. It just kind of go out to tie to the storm drain. And then as we build, we will just restack the stone the way that it is now. You know, that was originally, it was just dry stack, and our engineer said it's fine. And then we just go up all the way, and then that's how we're gonna do that. Now, that piece of the project, we will work with Sarah on that when we get, you know, some agreement with our neighbors, is that we would probably need to do that earlier rather than late. So, you know, I'm not sure if that's something that we have to come back for that, or some kind of emergency repair that we basically just, we're not changing anything really. We're just rebuilding it to make it safe.
Your neighbor was here before, and that was one of the issues as a part of a preliminary review for their property. And the board at that time did approve taking the wall down and rebuilding it.
Okay.
So, I mean, we've had that discussion, but that was on his property, and it was relative to his project. So I think you would need to come back, and we'd want to see those details.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, do you remember how long ago that request was?
Well, obviously it was before, it was somewhere between when I started on the board and you joined us. So,
Yeah.
were you on the board?
Mhm.
Okay, all right.
So how long ago, Ms. Cooper?
This is my second year. Yeah. So I started in April of 21.
I believe,
It seems like it was further back.
It's like it was longer.
Yeah.
That, because it was Council Member Cram was on here, and we had a lengthy discussion about.
It was under the old code, correct?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it was definitely.
Okay. So
Yeah.
the answer to that question is, under the old code, the approvals lasted for a year. So we would need a separate minor project to
Well-
come back for that work.
And they weren't even addressing the south face of the wall. They were only addressing the face of the wall that's on the east. So the approval probably wouldn't have mattered anyways, because they were going to try to keep that up. And then there was even discussion about slightly relocating it. So you might look at those, review those minutes from that meeting.
I think that was within that time frame, because I have a lot of pictures on my phone from that when I went to that site.
Okay,
And it was before our tour.
okay.
I just worry about this, you know, because it would take quite a while. If we come back here, it's like another, you know, month and a half, or, you know, with all the scheduling and everything. I don't know if there's any way we can address that.
It is in part of the historic fabric. So I think unfortunately, we have to review it. So unless, I don't think there's a clause here where the chief building official says something is such a risk that, I think we have to address it.
I would also guess that application, since it's a structure on two properties, would need to be a joint application with both property owners being party to it.
Yeah, that
Okay, I mean, I just want to make sure that we're not going to hurt anybody if that thing collapses, you know, a month from now. Because, I mean, the schedule is that we probably won't be able to get all the drawings in 2 weeks, and then it takes 6 weeks to come back to here. So that's 2 months at the earliest. And then we need to apply for building permits. That's another probably month and a half, and that's the best case scenario. So I'm just saying, I mean, we can roll our dice to see, but that thing might collapse next time when we come back. I'm just telling you.
The applications can certainly be concurrent. They're going to be different, but they can be concurrent with the final development plan.
Okay, so we'll definitely need to, you know, figure out with our neighbors and make sure that we have the information in front of you as quickly as possible.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Have we had any public comment?
We have not.
Okay. All right. So why don't we, this will elicit more conversation, I'm sure, but why don't we just work our way through the recommendations and see how we feel about those. The first recommendation was for an approval of the parking plan.
I think I'm personally open to modifying those 5 spaces, right? I mean, I don't know from here, but I mean, amongst us, if they came back with something that harmonized maybe the lot coverage plus okay, I know this is difficult with that, but I'd be open to an alternate parking plan with the on-site. So I'm not opposed to changing the 5 to something else to gain other things.
So do you want to strike this? Do you want to say the parking plan as submitted is approved? That doesn't mean they can't submit something else.
What does it say? The parking plan, what is it?
Mr. Chairman, I have taken the liberty of drafting some additional conditions of approval for your consideration. If you would take a look at number 11 and see if that works for you.
Sean, Marty, you brought up those points. How do you feel about that?
Limit it to 1. I mean, if it's 1 or 2, I mean, I don't know where the limit is. I mean, you want to have something there, but if it's 1 or 2, I think I personally could be okay with that. So,
Lori?
Well, let me ask a follow-up to Sarah. If they were to reduce the on-site parking, would staff still feel comfortable with having that parking now go out to the remote lots?
Yes, we would. The goal really is to have more, I'll call it neighborhood parking, where it's contained in organized groups around the district instead of having on-site parking. So yes, we would.
The numbers you gave me made me feel comfortable with it, saying that there's clearly more than adequate parking available.
Correct.
Garage and, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On to the next one. The approval of the waiver for lot coverage at 90%. Yeah, I've indicated I'm not comfortable with this.
and I'd follow on Gary because we've had a few of them come in here and we've tried to squeeze them more and more toward the code of the language.
I
in
feel
the
like
code.
we're eroding our code. We've
Yeah.
just adopted things and then we grant waivers. And this, we can talk about Juliet balcony here in a minute, but this is a pretty substantial change to our codes.
Actually, if you flip it around and say, rather than saying 85 to 90, change it to 10 to 15, it sounds huge. And so I agree with you. I think that we shouldn't be waiving the 5%. I really don't think
And
so.
considering we're not working with any particular existing conditions that are restricting that property to something that's already at 90.
Okay, so we're going to strike that one.
All right.
Okay. Approval of the Juliet balcony. What did you mean? Clarify the language at 1.5 stories, because when you look at the location of that, it looks like it's maybe 5 feet. The bottom of it's maybe 5 feet off the grade when we look at that elevation. It doesn't look like it's up 1.5 stories. Is that accurate? The language says approval for the Juliet balcony at 1.5 stories.
Right.
Is it the elevation that Juliet balcony looks like it's lining up with the balustrade in the front?
Right. I think what it meant is that the Juliet balcony is supposed to be on the 2nd floor only. So obviously, if you start on the 1st floor, like if you're on at grade and you put a Juliet balcony, that's one story. But because the ground is sloping down, and so by the time you go down there, it's kind of half a story up. So that's why they call it 1.5. It's really half, but because you call the first one, so you already have 1. You start with 1, you add half. That's 1.5.
Is it going to be where you have it on the drawing?
Huh?
Is it going to be where you have it on the drawing?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Okay. Feelings about that?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Already
I'm
had it.
not opposed.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too. So, okay, I don't think this is a substantial waiver compared to the lot coverage issue. Approval of the waiver for no foundation plantings on Wing Hill Lane.
Considering they're putting in trees, I have no problem with that too.
The same with the sidewalk that you have, and I think that
Yeah.
is an improvement that is good, and I'm okay with that.
I guess for me, it just ties more to the overall site plan that we need to accommodate a reduction, and also that we need to, I think, find a better place for addressing the trash disposal containers. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with a waiver for no foundation plantings, but maybe there'll be an opportunity for some foundation plantings on the north side, for instance, if there's some changes made. So,
Yeah, I think this gives them the flexibility. If they revise the site plan, you have 5% more potential landscape. This gives them the flexibility if they want to go back and put something in that location. But I think this is a good compromise since the tree. So I'm comfortable with this. Okay, the approval of the preliminary development plan with the conditions. I think the first one's pretty clear. Any conversation, the first one? Okay. Any conversations about the second one? Okay. How about the third one? Oh, no. Okay. All right. All right. And number 4, that's sort of out of our hands. That's not, okay. Number 5.
Condition in, or,
Yeah,
5 and 11 or somehow,
okay.
or 11, I think it was 11 are linked.
Okay. How do we feel about, do we need to be so specific at this point regarding the color? And Sarah, maybe you could enlighten us on that one, on the bollards.
Yes, and we could not find location of the bollards on the site plan. So we weren't sure if this was just a typo or something, and they were identified as being kind of a high visibility yellow. So it was just kind of a, please explain these bollards, and if they are necessary, let's at least make sure they're a dark bronze to match the other elements on the site. So,
Mr. Lai, are you comfortable with that language?
Yeah, actually, I don't think we have bollard. That's why you can't find it. It's probably some.
and that's what we were thinking, there was a detail for it, but we couldn't find it on the plan itself. So that was just kind of a reminder for us to, investigate it and or remove it.
Should we remove that because it assumes they're going to be they're going to be located on the drawing. So if they don't have them in the project, the detail may have been a standard detail that was placed on the drawings.
We can remove it if you wish. That was kind of the if applicable phrase at the end that,
Okay.
if they're
I'm
not
sorry.
there,
Okay.
it's
All right.
okay.
Yeah, I'd rather leave it in just in case, because clearly the details, and here's the lawyer in me, the details in your text, if it's not in the plan,
Right.
you guys can make it consistent, but.
Maybe we'll add one. We'll find some place.
No, they're impervious. Well, you don't want to do that.
We'll make sure it's dark bronze color. No problem.
Everyone comfortable with item 7? Okay. All right. Are you okay, applicants, with number 7?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Item 8. Then maybe coordinating with the engineering department.
Yeah, we have to do that anyway. I mean, that's the next step. We make sure, verify all the distance, clearance and all that.
Okay. All right. Okay. And you're comfortable with 9? Marty, are you comfortable with 9? Everybody comfortable with 9? Okay. Marty, you looked at me. What does that mean?
Oh, I love it, right up to further evaluated at FDP. But I have, as I've expressed repeatedly tonight, concerns. So hopefully there'll be a resolution that'll be aesthetically pleasing and practical.
Do you have a different language? Are you okay with this language? And I think it comes up in 11 as well.
Well, I think in 11, it's fine. I think, I don't think there's really a way to integrate the trash receptacles with the historic wall and privy system on the north side of the building personally. However, and I also think it's going to be a problem for access and disposal. However, I am appreciative of the fact that there's a drop down to the parking lot area, and that may present additional problems as far as accessing trash. So I guess I don't have a good recommendation for how to change the language of the condition, other than it needs to be further evaluated to be consistent with our historic district plan, really.
It's pretty open-ended. It just says, study it, come back. You've heard our concerns.
What
I
it
mean,
does
it's not
say,
just the wall privy system, it's the whole aesthetic of the downtown district, including the adjacent property proximity.
what 9 really says is that we don't agree to it at this point. So I think 9, it needs to be there. If we're going to approve the preliminary plan today, this exempts the trash location, basically. So I think it addresses your concern, at least until final.
Okay. All right. 10, we'll continue to have discussions about. Is 10 okay? Okay. All
It's
right.
good for you, Gary. I mean, I know you have some concerns on that. Is that?
Look, I think you've listened to us in our earlier meeting, and so I think we all appreciate the changes that have been made. It's coming closer to the concerns that we had. So just think about that one. I mean, that's what this is saying. We want to discuss it further. 11, I think we all talked about. And are you okay with 12? Well, that one, does it have to, shall be a separate joint MPR? Does it have to be because we'll have the other owner involved?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
But again, the two applications, the final development plan for this project and then the remediation plan for the joint wall may run concurrently.
Do we know if he's coming in with a remediation plan?
We have not heard from the other owner, so we don't know if he's pursuing that plan or not. Okay.
I'm sorry, what does MPR stand for?
Minor development plan.
Okay, I see.
minor MPR.
Minor project
Minor
review.
project review.
Or that, yes. Minor
Okay,
project
all right.
review.
Okay. Okay. Huh? Minor project review request?
I think it's review.
Review, okay.
Okay, so we've clarified what the conditions are going to be, so let's, so we need to first have a motion to approve the parking plan as noting the condition. Okay, because we have the conditions separate from the waivers, and yet one of the conditions impacts the waiver. I think, well, Mr. Boggs, you're looking,
So I think I'm anticipating your question is whether you can move to approve the parking plan and then have a condition relative to the parking plan in the preliminary development plan.
does it make sense to do that?
My suggestion would be to move to approve the parking plan subject to the condition specified in the preliminary development plan, and then move forward with your preliminary development plan and conditions.
Do we have to approve the parking plan at all?
Can we wait to approve it at the final?
Do you want to just table that one?
Yeah, I would suggest that I can even move it, I won't move it yet until you're ready to do this, but to table it until they come back at the final project review.
I mean, we're not opposed to the parking plan. We're just thinking that it's going to change anyway. So when you come back for the final development plan, we can approve the parking plan with whatever adjustments have been made.
Yeah, that would be a
That
sensible
seems
solution.
cleaner.
Okay, is there a motion to table that?
I'll move to table the
I'll-
approval of the parking plan.
And I will second that.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Ms. Damisser,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the two waivers? One being the approval of the waiver for the Juliet balcony, and the other, the approval of the waiver for well, do we need to amend this language first?
I think we take them. I think we need to take them separately. We can move the approval or move to approve the waiver for the Juliet balcony as proposed.
It's fine.
So I'll move to approve the Juliet balcony as proposed.
I'll second.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Damisser,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper.
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the waiver for no foundation plantings on Wing Hill Lane?
So moved.
I'll second.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Damisser.
Yes.
Okay, now we have the planning recommendation. Do we need to have a vote on the first recommendation, on the first waiver? Which one? That's the lot coverage at 90%.
No.
So we don't need to vote.
Well, we could vote and it would be denied, or we could table it.
We can, yeah.
Or you simply just take no action on it and it would be considered,
You should come.
that
to
would
all- you should
act
come
as
to
a
all our meetings.
denial.
Okay, all right.
Right, because we don't take, I mean, it needs to follow the code. I mean, essentially that would be.
Right. If we don't move it.
being compliant
Correct.
Right. Right.
With no action.
Okay.
That would be. Yeah.
If you're comfortable with that, that way we don't have on the record, we voted no, and, okay. All right, is there a motion to approve the development plan with the, do we have 14 conditions now? How many conditions do we have? 12 conditions?
12.
Okay.
I'll move to approve the preliminary development plan with 12 conditions as identified.
Second.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Damisar,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay. Does anybody need a break? Short break? Okay, all right.
Excuse me.
Excuse me, before we get started again, I did want to point out that the applicant did bring in some samples down here. So if anybody wanted to take a quick look before Lori returns. Yeah. So far, so good. Yes, thank you.
Everybody ready? Okay. Okay. Our last item, Tucci's at 35 North High Street. This is a preliminary development plan review. The application is a request for the construction of 3 building additions to the existing restaurant on a 0.23 acre site, zoned Historic District Historic Core. The site is northwest of the intersection of North High Street with Wing Hill Lane. Ms. Holt will be our presenter.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening again, everyone. We have 3 applications before you tonight at this address. We have a preliminary development plan, a parking plan, and some waivers. The location is south of the library off of North High Street, Wing Hill Lane, and Darby Street. The closer view shows the proposed patio enclosure on the east side, the proposed wine room area on the north. This is on land previously purchased from the city. And then the proposed kitchen and mechanical room addition is going to be in the southwest corner where the parking currently exists. The site is zoned Historic District Historic Core, and it's the same zone as the surrounding properties. We reviewed the project history related to COVID in the planning report, so I won't go over that again. But previous requests pertinent to this application include lot coverage and parking variances granted in 2002. The lot coverage approval for 91% still applies and does accommodate this request. The new parking plan is requested tonight because they are proposing to remove the 2 on-site parking spaces. In November of 2021, a concept plan came before this board, and at that time it was a request to keep some form of the temporary COVID structure. This was generally well received with acknowledgement that the details of meeting the guidelines would be paramount. In January of this year, this board heard an informal review to obtain feedback about 2 potential design solutions. So tonight, we have an expanded preliminary development plan for the 3-phased project previously described. Going over a little bit of site zoning history as a reminder, because it's a little bit complex. In 2012, the Bridge Street District Historic Core zoning was approved, and that encompassed this use and this site. And accommodations were made at that time to allow existing non-conforming buildings and uses to remain as fully legal. And that code also allowed those same buildings and uses to expand. So fast forward to 2021, where the historic district code was newly approved, and those same provisions carry over and still apply to this site. So today, our law office has rendered an opinion that any further expansion of the restaurant does require a waiver, and that is part of the request that you see in your planning report tonight. Looking at existing conditions on the site, from North High Street, we see the view of the patio, and we see the 1955 building in the back, just the top of the gable there. Views from the public walkway on the north side. On the left side of the screen, we see the wine room location with the city landscaping and lighting bollards within the project area. That is a topic of a recommended condition of approval. And then also shown is the view to the patio from that same walkway. Next, we have the views along Wing Hill Lane. And this is actually Wing Hill Lane right-of-way. So we see the view to the patio, and then the photo on the right shows an area of potential encroachment into the right-of-way, which is also subject of a condition of approval. And finally, looking east along city right-of-way from Darby Street, this area shows the kitchen and mechanical room expansion. A little bit of context with the proposed project. This view shows looking north on North High Street. Bry High is to the left in this view. And then looking south, Harvest Pizza is on the right. So you can get a sense of the context for the patio enclosure. So moving into the site plan, again, the applicant states that the lot will have 90% lot coverage, where 91% is allowed with the 2002 variance. And pointing out the different phases here, the first phase is located here, encompassing the patio enclosure, the hyphen connection, ADA ramps, and some outdoor tables. Excuse me. The second phase is the wine room addition on the north side of the property. The third phase is that kitchen and mechanical addition, including enclosing existing dumpsters. Just for reference, this is the potential encroachment on the south side, and the applicant is showing a pedestrian walkway along Darby Street for pedestrian safety. This is bricked with bollards, and this is subject of a condition of approval as well. So phase one of the project has various parts that I'd like to point out. We have the patio enclosure with the inside eating, the hyphen portion that connects to the original building. We have a main entry on the north side, and then on the southeast corner, there is additional eating outside. These are the phase one elevations, and you'll note that the glass and brick area is the patio portion, the patio enclosure portion. We see flat roofs per previous board direction, and this is subject of a waiver request. The hyphen in these views are shown here. This has been lowered and inset per board direction, and it's clad in board and batten siding. The gate entryway is shown here. Some adjustments have had to be made because of the required ADA ramps where we can no longer have the gate swing to accommodate those ramps. Please note the flat awnings between the folding and transom windows, as noted here. These are flat to allow the folding windows to open, obviously, and to maximize light coming into the patio area. No waiver is required for those flat awnings. Phase 2, again, the wine room addition on the north side, and this uses land previously purchased from the city. Taking a look at that elevation, this has a flat roof, again, subject to a waiver. The existing roof is shown behind it, so it's a little bit confusing, but the wine room has a flat roof. It's shown clad in board and batten siding, again, subject of a waiver to use the hardy plank. Shutter details have been provided for some pedestrian interest. And this is subject, or this addition is subject to conditions to repair and replace the existing city landscaping and lighting to its previous condition post-construction. Phase 3, as we've discussed, is the condition and the kitchen and mechanical expansion. And this is at the location of the 2 existing parking spaces, hence the need for the new parking plan. This particular addition does not appear to meet the required 5-foot rear setback, so a condition of approval addresses that. This addition will also enclose currently exposed dumpsters. These are the elevations for that phase. We see board and batten siding and shutter details again. The setback condition may affect the type of self-closing doors that can be used for the dumpsters, and those doors cannot encroach on the rights of way. Taking a look at materials for the patio enclosure, here is shown brick to match the existing building and also as presented up here at the front of the room. The patio brick will match the existing. And we have photos of the existing patio furniture which is proposed to be reused. No umbrellas are proposed. And then you've seen the hardy plank along with the window and the other material samples. The proposed colors include hammered silver for the hardy plank board and batten, Roycroft copper red for window frames on the patio enclosure, Roycroft bottle green for the shutters on the wine room and the kitchen expansions. The windows are proposed to be a khaki finish from Colby. That is a manufacturer's finish. The windows and doors, both folding and static, are proposed to be from Colby, and that information was included in your packets. The proposed roof material is a white thermoplastic polyolefin, or TPO. That was also up front for you to see. Staff has concerns about visibility from Bry High and the public realm, so that is subject of a condition of approval as well. These elevations allow you to see the entire project, all 4 sides with the adjacent buildings and all of the colors as proposed. These are the entry gate and fencing details for the patio enclosure. The materials and colors need to be supplied at the final development plan. Moving on to lighting, 2 types of lighting are proposed at this stage. One is to replace non-compliant security style lighting on the existing building, and that replacement light is the Wedge 1 LED as shown in bronze. And then the second light is for the patio enclosure. And this is subject to a condition of approval. It is not full cutoff as shown in the yellow box on the slide. We need some more lumen information. It's possible that this condition could be okay, but it needs to meet certain code criteria. And in either case, staff requests that lights only be located on the brick columns rather than in between each bank of windows. Moving on to the parking plan, 78 spaces are required for the proposal based on the square footage. Since no on-street parking is located on this side of North High Street, the full 78 spaces are required to be included in this parking plan. We see that the library and the Darby lots are within the required 600-foot radius of the site. The library has 362 public spaces that are potentially available. The Darby lot has the revised number of 103 public spaces that are potentially available, and staff does support this plan. The first waiver is for building size, and this is to allow a building of 7,841 gross square feet, where the existing building is 7,256 gross square feet. All criteria are met with conditions or not applicable, and staff does support this waiver. The next waiver is for roof pitch. And this would be to allow a slope of 1/4 to 12, where flat roofs are not permitted in the core. Staff supports this based on the positive effect on massing and scale, and as previously discussed at the board. We do have a condition of approval, again, recommending that the roof color be changed to a more earth tone, more closely matching the brick and the other materials on the building. So regarding this waiver, all criteria are met or not applicable, and staff supports the waiver. The next waiver is to allow the use of hardy plank for siding, noting that a condition of approval addresses the texture of the plank to be more in keeping with the look of real wood. And we support the use of this material. For the preliminary development plan itself, the criteria are met with conditions and/or waivers and/or the parking plan. And this is as described in the planning report. So finally, coming to our recommendations. Staff is recommending approval of the parking plan, approval of all 3 waivers, and approval of the preliminary development plan with a total of 16 conditions as outlined in the planning report and in this presentation. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Sarah, I have one. If this is we're approving essentially a master plan for 3 phases. So if the other 2 phases don't go ahead within a year, they would need to come back for approval of those phases. Is that right?
The approval period was actually extended with the new code, so now an applicant has a 2-year window to get those phases approved or act on any approvals here.
Okay. So
Yes.
otherwise, if they don't, they'd be coming back. Okay.
That's correct. Yes.
Any other questions for Sarah? Maybe just one kind of detail question. So I'm just on the size of the building. So right now there's 7,256 square feet. I think, Mr. Boggs, you came up with that's what they would be allowed to build on in the existing code. I think that's what you put. And then what they're trying to build, or what the next one is, about 600 square feet more than that. 1780 something, 7,800 and something like this. But when we originally, a few years ago, we approved the wine, we approved it and they didn't go forward, but that was, we took that on as the wine building we already had approved, and then they didn't go forward. So that was 100 and some square feet that we have pre-approved. They didn't go forward, so it's off the table, but we approved that before. So the newest thing is around 300 or 400 square feet. So the kitchen's about 400 square feet. I'm just trying to line up all of the things that we've done in the past to just to make it
Yes.
clear. I couldn't read the drawing. It looked like it was 20 by 40, maybe 20 by 30. So like 400 square feet is the kitchen.
That sounds
Something-
about
something
right,
about that
and I'm
200
sure
square
the
feet on the-
applicant can give you the specific
Sure, okay.
numbers. Yeah, probably 400 square feet and approximately 200 square feet.
So I'm just trying to keep it straight that right now they're approved for the 7256. We have approved, even though they didn't go forward, with another 200 square feet for the wine room. And then the kitchen is now, let's say, a new request, so to speak.
I want to follow up on that just to clarify, because Sarah, in your earlier presentation, I think this dovetails into Mr. Boggs' memo. You said they're approved for 91% coverage. So that's what was approved based on the variance, not the variance, but the waiver, and I don't know how it's, but in 2002.
It was a variance issued by the BZA at that time.
And so
Yes.
they, based on that and the size, so they can build that as the building, but what they're proposing is less than that. Is that correct? Because I thought I heard you're proposing slightly less.
Yes, their data that they have provided us indicates 90% coverage.
Okay, I wanted to clarify that. What I think is interesting, which is kind of left out of the conversation, but our code doesn't differentiate, is when that was approved, it was approved for not a building, but it was approved for exterior space, impervious cover. So our code in this, in another setting in the community, we do differentiate, but we don't differentiate here. So they are based on, and I don't question, the legal memo at all, but based on that, and our code, it just equates them. It's just coverage. So it's a big change, but I think Mr. Boggs's memo makes it real clear that 91's approved, so it's allowed. So
91's approved, but the waiver is for the 6, because it's in the math now, right? So it's 7,800 is under 91, but we're approving a waiver for the 6. I'm just trying to keep straight to make sure that I understand what was approved and what the waiver kind of is granting.
It is confusing because there's a couple of different criteria in play here. The 91% is lot coverage approval. The waiver request is with regard to the size of the eating and drinking establishment. And so the existing eating and drinking establishment does not take up the entirety of the approved lot coverage. So the waiver request is to allow expansion of that eating and drinking establishment, and yet the total of that will remain below the 91% approved lot coverage.
Clear. Just want to make sure I was clear.
All right. Other initial questions for staff? Okay. Applicants, would you like to make a presentation? Were you sworn in? Okay. All right.
Okay.
When Craig comes up to speak, I'll swear him in.
You gotta swear.
We can do it now because you're probably going to speak. Okay. Raise your right hand and answer in the affirmative. Do you swear to affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth in your testimony to the board?
I will.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right, Mr. Lusk.
Yes, Michael Lusk, principal with Lusk Architecture. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to present tonight. I think Sarah's done a nice job Want to thank the board and Sarah for all you've done to help us out here. We've gone through a lot of detail on this project, and it's turned out to be a fairly complex endeavor, a lot of moving parts and so forth, but I think we've tackled most of them. I think we've got the last time we were here, I talked about how difficult the hyphen was operationally. I think we have that worked out to where it works quite well. I think we've covered most of the issues, and I know we'll probably want to do some additional discussion on each of the recommendations. But I think really, unless I can go through the entire plan if you'd like and talk about specifics, or if you want to open it up to questions, I can do it that way as well.
You want to open up more to questions? And you can then answer questions based on the comments? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, just to.
So,
All
you
right.
want me to go?
Does anybody have questions, initial questions for Mr. West?
I don't have an initial question.
Okay, I have a few. Okay. And if I know earlier in COVID, those 2 parking spaces were used for pickup for people who ordered off-site and came to pick things up. How's that going to be handled now if those spaces are?
Sure. I think they'll have to use the parking lot to the west for pickup. Yeah, I think, originally that piece of pavement was really used for access into the garages. But since the garages are now fully operational internally, I think they were just using it for pickup and so forth. Craig, I don't know if you have a comment on how pickup, how those that might want to do pickup food, where they would park.
Your takeout would probably occur on Wing Hill in the alleyway. If that back area parking spaces go away, that's where they pull in.
Okay. How come the transoms don't have the same division in the windows as the doors below?
I think the windows below are kind of set in terms of what sizes they can be to do the folding operation. We wanted to break that scale down some up above. I think, just so they weren't big windows. So it's a design issue, design approach. We thought it had kind of I think you had mentioned kind of a little bit of an industrial look the last time, and that's kind of what that feels like to me.
Okay, I was just curious. There was something I saw positive about it before, but it just seemed like they could line up. And how come they're red? The cladding of those doesn't. At least maybe I misinterpreted some of the documents, but it looks like the cladding on those is a different color than the cladding of the rest.
It's just the trim around it is the red. It's just a little accent on the trim. It's not the windows themselves. The windows themselves are the khaki color.
So they're going to match the window cladding.
They'll match. Yeah, all windows and doors will be the khaki.
What I know when maybe Mr. Barnum brought this to us at one time, I don't think you were here. Instead of shutters, he had like trellises on some of the wall, maybe the wall of the wine room where you're going to grow plantings. Now you have shutters.
Yeah, we were trying to just break up the expanse of that wall. I didn't know about trellises. I'd not heard that.
It's a minor point. It just seems the walls are already so broken up with all the different materials and plane changes, and they don't really, it's not like you see a window head above them or a sill sticking out below. They kind of look sort of tacked on, but yeah, I was just curious.
Okay.
About that. I would not necessarily be a condition of my approval, but it just they don't really look like like shutters, but least I understand the rationale. How did the encroachment come about? Do you know? I was kind of curious about that too, the encroachment of the part of the existing structure into the city's property. Is there any, maybe Mr. Barnum can answer that, and that's not fair to ask you.
I don't know how, as far as he knows, it's always been encroached onto the right of way. Correct?
Yeah, I remember since we were there, 1998, when we opened the restaurant, nothing changed.
It was there then? Okay. All right.
Yeah, so there was confusion as to how we handle it through this process, so.
Okay. Those are the only questions I had.
I don't have any questions. Maybe just some discussion, maybe a little bit here, but.
Okay.
Are you recommending a change to the shutters on the wine room?
I wouldn't make it a condition of my, it's not, I wouldn't make it a condition of my approval. So it just, to me, doesn't seem needed, but it's their design, and I'm not going to make a condition.
Well, because we've had some discussions about other windows, I too didn't really, I thought the look was kind of lacking, or kind of brought the aesthetic of the whole building, kind of brought it away.
There are existing elements like that now. And that's kind of why we went to that aesthetic, just to keep it simple, give it a little more detail, more shutter-like, because the ones that are there are just simply boards. And so we were just trying to keep that same design element consistent through where we wanted to break up. And, some of that was working with Sarah to try to look at things that, we felt needed to be done to improve the aesthetic. So,
So the shutters will be operational. They have to be operational to be approved for our historic district, correct?
There have been a couple that they've usually had shutters someplace else, but I think there have been a couple that we've approved with some misgivings. What? Don't look at me. But I think we have approved. It would not be something that we haven't approved.
But there's no window back there.
No, there are no windows.
So, is that a shutter? Is that really technically a shutter? Looks to me like that.
Oh,
Accessory of some sort. I mean, maybe it is a shutter.
so when we looked at it, it was just a blank wall.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, what can we do to this to do something to?
I can see that you're the scalloped wood boards that close the one seating area. It's clear you're trying to make a connection, at least when I look at the drawings, with those. And I just thought.
But even on the concrete block garage, I believe there's some, and around the corner, there's other places other than where those curved that are just either square or rectangle.
Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay. Have we had any public comment?
We have not.
I will bring up one thing. I know that we were striving to reduce the hyphen, presence of the hyphen and the lowering it. We actually had the parapets lower initially when we were preparing this presentation. Had them about a foot, maybe a little less, because we were trying to keep them down. And then I became aware that the code requires them to be at least 2 feet tall. We're open to lowering them a bit if the board would like to see that happen. I mean,
board members, how do you feel about that? That is this
thing, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mechanical enclosure, we've gotten quite a bit smaller. The packet actually shows 2 units in there. We've gone back to the engineer. We've got that to 1 unit. That enclosure may change just slightly, I get for engineering reasons, but for the most part, we've reduced that to a pretty small size. And
What-
it sits back. Walking up to the front door, you won't see that, I don't think.
I'm assuming when we look at the elevations, the mechanical enclosure you're referring to, as I look at the north, is just that projection
Right.
that's about, at this scale, maybe 1.5 feet taller than the parapet in front of it.
Exactly. And we
So-
pulled it away from the existing building as well, so that you see the gable now. It doesn't cover up the gable. So those were all things that we were responding to from your comments initially.
Yeah, for me, it's okay.
Yeah, we also felt that, we did show a gate there. And the problem was the gate requires landings on both sides. When we did that, there wasn't enough room to center the stair on the north end, up center with the front door. It was off center. So we got to thinking about it. So, operationally, a gate's going to be problematic. Kids could get their fingers in it. I think we're representing the gateway. At final development plan, we'll have a graphics package for you, and we're intending to do some signage above that gate. So,
What is the material between the windows that the light fixtures, I know one of the conditions is move those fixtures, but the light fixtures are mounted to. Is it, there's a kind of trim that's shown between the doors that the windows are mounted to?
yeah, one time we had I don't know if it's still in the packet. We had a section through that, but it's just wood trim. Yeah,
Okay.
we did not keep that in there. But we have that detailed with, it's just a wood trim piece, hardy trim.
Okay. Do you want to go through it sounds like we don't have any other
I
conversation.
mean, for me, the conversation is more about just making sure the lot coverage. We kind of
Okay.
agree on what the building coverage would be, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Just from maybe discussion of making sure that we're clear on the building coverage, not the lot coverage, but the expansion of, let's say
You
the
wanna go
600
back?
extra square feet.
Do you want to go back over that, or was that clarified for you?
It's clarified. I just want to make sure that we're clear because we're going to be taking something that we already had a lot of discussion on last week about is the overall coverage too big, and now we're adding 600 square feet.
Well,
So I just want to make sure that
but-
we're all kind of aligned on how
But
we
it was grandfathered.
And based on my interpretation, is based on the legal interpretation. I mean, if they want to go right up to 91%,
That's not the way I understand it. I understand that we have to have a waiver around because it's the eating and drinking
Right.
establishment is going to be too big in this proposal.
Correct. So there's a waiver required to expand the footprint of the eating and drinking establishment itself, which is inclusive of the
Yep.
indoor areas as well as the outdoor areas. But the lot coverage, anything impervious or semi-permeable, can be up to 91%.
but feasibly, we could say, no, you can't increase that, but they could put the square footage back in the kitchen, or they could put the square footage someplace else.
No, you can't increase what? I'm sorry.
Well, if we were to say, okay, we weren't going to grant that waiver for increasing the dining space. However, they're limited to 91%. So that square footage that was going to go into dining space could be put someplace else,
The
building program.
the kitchen, the dishwashing, all of that is included in the eating and drinking facility, as well as the dining space. Everything front of house and back of house is part of eating and drinking facility.
The wine room too?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's that's why I wanted to talk about, because when we had the
Yeah,
last
so the
time,
whole footprint, yeah.
footprint, we talked a lot about how much bigger the eating and drinking was going to be. Legal opinion is it can be up to X, and now it's going to be
Even
Right.
bigger.
It can be what it is now without there being a waiver.
Yep.
Even though the use-specific limitation on eating and drinking facilities that was adopted with the new code is 3,500 square feet.
Right.
It's more than that now, which is fine, but the additional 600 square feet that they are proposing for various functions of the facility does require a waiver because it makes it less compliant with the current code.
Okay.
That's what I want to make sure. that
Yeah,
we talk, 'cause
I'm
that-
glad you brought
yeah,
that up.
just want to make sure
because-
that we had a lot of
Yeah,
discussion
no,
around how
thank you.
big it,
Thank
how
you.
big it should be or could be. Yeah.
So if you didn't get the waiver, where would the 600 square feet come out of?
Well, right now, if we have to address the setback for the dumpsters, it may come out, some of it come out of there. But we'd have to go through and understand where that would be. I mean.
Because for me, I mean, originally, just from the discussion, the wine room, I mean, I think we envisioned that, I mean, it was different because we didn't know that this was coming, so somehow
It's a
that makes some
confusing-
Oh,
sense.
that's a fair point.
The 400 square feet is now what, going to be, let's call it
Exhibit here. so
5% more, something like that, 400 or something like that. Are we comfortable with that? I mean, that's my question. Let's make, readdress the ones we had from the last
Based
time.
on the conversation we
Yeah.
had before.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Erically, I'm not so opposed. I just wanted to hear what everybody else had to say. And that's it.
But I guess I
Yeah.
have my mic on. I
Yeah.
have difficulty based on the comments
Yeah.
before.
You know, there's something there.
I wasn't at the before, I'm too
Yeah.
new for that,
Yeah.
but as
Well,
a
we gotta
fresh
move
face
it
on this, it just seems massive.
Setback. That's
Especially
15
since and I know they are grandfathered into their old number,
so that's
but it's
300
already larger than
there.
what the current code is looking at compared to, any other restaurant is going to be significantly smaller.
No, just,
Yeah,
we're good.
Yes.
yeah, that grandfather allows it to be bigger.
So I find your question of where the 600 feet would come from if we don't approve the waiver to be apt.
You're asking me where it would come from?
Yeah, if we did not approve the
Well,
square footage waiver.
that 600 is probably going to get reduced if we have to move if we have to adjust for the setback, the 15 foot, because that's, I'm guessing about 15 by 20, so 300 square feet there. So we're then, at that point, we're just slightly over. And then we'd have to maybe look at the outdoor dining, which would be a shame to lose that. The building footprint, I mean, we don't have a lot of flexibility there.
Mhm.
Without it really impacting particularly schedule.
It's hard for me to see the grounds of granting this. I mean, what's the unusual, the actual unusual condition you have is the benefit the city's given you in the interpretation of what you can build. So you already, to me, have a competitive advantage over every other restaurant in the area because the size you can make it under the current code. And that interpretation. So I have trouble with this waiver.
I also find it a misnomer to be outdoor dining anymore. So, now you've got Four Season Dining with this, and it's making a massive dining room that is not consistent with the historic nature of the area.
There is outdoor dining though.
Right, but that's not being included in the square footage.
Yes, it is.
It is.
Oh, it is?
In-
Oh, because it's
in-
considered dining. I see.
in-
Okay.
In the 91% number, that's included, but not in the 91 that they can cover. The outdoor dining is included, right?
No.
It is
it's
included in both the 91
because it's
and
considered
the
dining.
eating and drinking facility.
It's considered the use. I get it.
Right.
Right.
Because their existing outdoor patio is considered the existing footprint of the eating and drinking facility, gross square footage.
Essentially, for me, the new thing is the wine, and more or less the wine room and the kitchen. The other one is more or less fixed by, I think, the square footage of what the patio was, and they're building on all of it, more or less. west, is what it looks like to me, at least in the drawing.
But if they back the patio enclosure up, they could reduce that size slightly in order to gain the square footage that they need without exceeding their existing square footage.
I don't know that that's the case, because you'd still have the outdoor dining. It would require them to back the entire, it would require them to shrink the entire gross square footage, indoor or outdoor, that is part of the eating and drinking facility, versus like pavers or landscaping or other things ancillary on the site.
Because for me, the way I understand it is what you've counted, everything that was patio. So essentially all of that's going to be eating and drinking regardless. So backing it up doesn't, even if you say I'm going to take 2 tables out, it's still going to
Right,
fit
even if
inside
you
of that.
back
So you're
up
going to have to, you have to eliminate it. You have to eliminate it. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, the way I understand, you almost have to say you can't have something that they want to add on. It's the way I would interpret what you're saying.
Or make the dining room smaller and make it landscape. Make that area landscape.
Right.
Reducing the front dining, the indoor, outdoor area now, dining area, all the way across in order to gain the 600
You don't
square feet.
put off the wine room, you don't do the wine.
Right, pull up the pavers, 600 square feet worth of
Take up
pavers,
600 square
and
feet.
put in plants. So people don't eat in that area is really what you're trying to do.
That's amazing.
Did you count, Mr. Luskin, a moment ago, were you talking about the area that was encroaching in your calculations that you're probably going to give up anyways? Was that included, the area that they use that's in the city's right of way? Was that included in the calculation?
Didn't include it in either calculation.
It
So,
was,
yeah, because it's not used for, well,
well, I'm
so-
just looking for a way to bring, that, if it was included, that takes some square footage out the number.
well, it's going to add square footage on both sides equally.
Because they're acquiring.
So if I can approach, I've got a diagram.
It seems so.
So this shaded area represents what's currently being used. So that's a certain square footage.
Right. That's what you count in the 80, whatever it is, 8,200. Yep.
72.
7,200.
Did not include that walkway there or the walkway down here.
Okay.
They store stuff in there, but it's not really used for operation. When I did the new square footage, it includes this little bit of outdoor dining and all this. Now, if I add that pathway here and here, doesn't say something wrong.
She does that to all of us.
It's her job.
So if I added it here on that, this is just the and up here, I think it's just a wash. But
The south side is not this property though.
right, so it was like,
So you can't add that. That can't be included. We haven't found any evidence of an encroachment permit or purchase or anything.
right.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
can't include that.
And that's part of why I didn't use it. Didn't think it was
Right.
right to include that. If I didn't include that, I was going to include that. I could, but then I'd have to include it up here. So it won't change that difference. So, again, if we lose 15 feet here,
That setback's 5.
was it 5? Okay. So, so you won't lose 50 feet. So, I mean, this is the area that's important. We probably prioritize guys agree with that. Outdoor dining should be kind of a shame. I think it's, you know, dining right on the street is just a nice piece of this that, you know, just brings life to the street. So,
And for me, the addition to the kitchen is integral because it adds what kind of function? What does that
well,
do?
we had to ask, so we gotta.
We should, everybody,
Yeah.
we should go back to the microphone so that
Everybody can-
Lori can
yep.
get this
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
minutes, and although this was very helpful.
So I'd like to make a few comments on the kitchen. The idea with the wine room expansion in the kitchen was the wish list, in that, you know, my main focus through this project and tonight was to really focus on the addition of the patio area. I know that we got approval a few years ago on the wine room expansion. And the reason that didn't go forward is because just to do that small project on that north side was going to be a huge cost where we were going to stage equipment. And that was only I think about a 200 square foot addition back then. And we were waiting for another project that we could do that in conjunction with that to lower those costs. And that never happened. And then COVID hit. The kitchen expansion area is an area that doesn't have to happen. It's a wish list. The amount of volume that we experienced when the structure was up before it came down on June 6th, the kitchen on many nights was stretched to its limit. So this was an idea to come and try to package all this together. But again, it's part of the wish list. It doesn't have to happen. I don't have plans right now to build an additional kitchen space or prep area. The business needs it. But really my focus is that patio structure. A couple of comments I'd like to make too is we've gone from a freestanding structure outside to the requirement for the city to do a contiguous structure. So we wouldn't be talking about the square footage if we were building a free structure outside, which was what we wanted to do. Because of the 25, I think the outdoor structure could only be 25% of the square footage as the original building. So the city's requiring us to basically take the face of the building off to expand the floor print, which I didn't want to do originally. So this is more expense, probably is going to require us to close down. On top of that, the increase in the square footage is now going to require me to sprinkle the entire facility, which is probably another $120,000 bill. I laugh because these expenses are just piling on. If it was a freestanding structure, I would not be held to that because one structure would be 4,000 square feet and the other would be 2,000 square feet. So, I mean, I'm trying to do whatever we can here. And I just want to make sure that the board understands, I don't know if this makes a big difference. We were very fortunate to have that structure up from the city for 2 years. And I don't want to call it a tent with 12 8-foot concrete footers in the ground. It was a structure. But since that came down June 6th, our business is down 35%. It's been devastating. Off in sales about $120,000 for the month of June. And that's probably $24,000 of lost gratuity for my staff. I mean, the clock is ticking, and it's been a tremendous hardship for the business. I mean, I really want to focus on, you know, how we work together to get that structure out front. I mean, I'm obviously willing to compromise. The other thing is the amount of money that we're proposing to spend, and I've mentioned this several times, I could build a brand new restaurant somewhere else for this same cost. And I'm taking a building that was built in 1955, that's a home, which I've spent millions of dollars on in the previous, and I'm trying to really make something very exciting for the district. When you said competitive advantage of other restaurants, there are other restaurants in the district right now that have a bigger floor plan. Even after I make this expansion, those restaurants are bigger than mine. And most of those restaurants have a covered patio. The Avenue has a covered patio. Cap City has a covered patio. The Pearl has a covered patio. Those are all season patios. I don't have that luxury. I only can use it maybe 5 or 6 months out of the year. And when that closes down this October, we're going to get crushed. I mean, it's just going to be, you know, I'm going to probably have to let people go. And that's when I asked the city to allow this structure to stay up till October 1st in anticipation of getting these approvals to start. Tent comes down, construction starts. So I'm just want you to know that we're going right now through a lot of pain out there with the storms and heat and so forth. So I guess the original question was on that expansion in the kitchen, doesn't have to happen. That's maybe a project we can do, again, phase 2, phase 3, a year or two from now, but it's the front structure of covering that Four Seasons patio. And it is a patio in the sense that all those windows are going to open up. And Mike made a good point. The reason we want to put a little patio space on the outside, it's because during the summer, then it really looks like a traditional patio. You actually have some outdoor dining, and you'll see some umbrellas outside of the structure, and that streetscape will be tremendous. And if we don't get that piece, then it's a building. It's still going to look nice, and you're going to see those windows open up. But that outdoor, even though it's a small little strip, and I probably will only get 2 top tables out there, it just adds so much more vibrancy and a great aesthetic look from the outside as people walk by and drive by. It's a no-brainer. So I'd hate to lose that as part of that. I think that really enhances what we're trying to accomplish.
Hypothetical question. The loss of 600 square feet, if that waiver's not approved, that's not going to kill your project, is it?
No. Again, what I would do is we can still operate with the kitchen the way it is. That back area has been somewhat of a sore spot for the last 10 years with the city. I mean, I've come with other proposals that there's a garage back there in the back that the proposal was years ago they wanted me to demolish it and so forth, is to clean that back area up. Those 2 parking spaces back there, I mean, obviously, we hate to lose any parking back there, but we have the parking garage and the Darby Street lot. But to clean that area back up there with this addition, make the dumpsters a little more of an enclosed area with some doors, that just helps everybody. Not only me, but I think it helps the city, because a lot of that, most of my customers park in the back and walk into the restaurant from the west side. So that would clean that up. But again, I don't have to do this kitchen expansion now. I just really need to focus on that front area. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Sarah, what's the coverage without the 600 square feet? What would the coverage be?
I'm sorry, what would the,
And maybe this is an unfair question. Do you know what the lot coverage would be without the 600 square feet? Where are they now?
oh, I do not know.
Gary, do you mean lot coverage or do you mean usage?
Okay, I'm
Space that's
doing
being
this
used as
differently.
restaurant.
Yeah, now I'm doing this a little differently because I want a number that's comparable to what we were talking, the zoning, what we were talking about with the other project. Lot coverage. So and I know what that's brought up in 600 is usage, but I'm interested in
Yeah, then
the
you're
lot coverage,
saying it
being
right.
able to
Yeah.
compare what the lot coverage would be without the 600, just thinking in terms of other projects, not so much the usage here.
Lot coverage shouldn't change.
Divided by 90, give you the overall. Wouldn't be a lot.
Right. So either way, it is currently allowed to have 91% lot coverage based on the previously granted variance. The actual calculated lot coverage would be somewhat less if it may or may not be less if that 600 square feet is not a kitchen. If it is some other impervious or semi-permeable material as a parking space, then your lot coverage is going to remain the same with or without that kitchen.
Okay.
Yeah, for instance, if we don't build that addition at all, it's currently impervious.
Okay.
So
So
the-
it wouldn't change the lot coverage.
Okay.
So only the wine room is adding square footage to the lot coverage? Because the kitchen is adding on to the asphalt area,
Mhm.
but the wine room is actually extending into grass and.
That's correct. I think that's a good way to put it.
Right.
So we
Things
could
about
go
10.
with the kitchen and just drop the wine room expansion.
Talking about 200 out of 10,000.
Yeah, that,
You're talking about going from 91 to 90.
Well, I'm trying to say that we're not.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
your mic's not on.
Oh, it is now.
Ms. Cooper,
I'm sorry. I'm trying to say that we would not be expanding. We would be staying where it was approved back originally, the 91%.
there, excuse me, even with this proposal at full size, it's not going above 91%, still within 90%, something like that. So it's the expansion, the waiver of the usage size that's at issue.
So
That's
for
where
me,
we're getting
I
the
mean,
600
as a
square
board,
feet.
we have to decide whether we think 600 extra square feet
Right.
is appropriate. Now, as the owner's saying, is okay, you want to make sure you get the phase one done. So we need to look at it in the phase of that, and we don't approve the other ones.
Cellar addition is hugely important to me in the sense that we've got a bunch of our alcohol in the garage all over the place. We're a huge wine-centric restaurant, and that kitchen or the wine room expansion is going to be able to hold all my inventory. It is going to be a guest feature. They can walk in and look at bottles. That really has to happen. And I bought that with city land that we purchased for obviously the purpose of building this. And it's a storage room. I mean, it's not a dining area, but I've got to have it for security and just the amenity for guests to walk in. And right now the wine's all over the restaurant. It's a disaster.
Would you mind turning on your mic?
I thought it was on.
Okay. So I would rather lose, if I had to lose something now in this phase, I would rather lose the kitchen if I had to, but keep that wine cellar intact.
We're not changing the lot coverage.
No,
These
it's still saying the same.
They're independent issues, really.
Yeah.
The lot coverage is remaining. I shouldn't say it will remain the same because the addition of the wine room would add to the existing lot coverage, but even with the addition of the wine room, they would be below their permitted lot coverage.
Can we amend the earlier variance to say, if we were to approve this, but they can't increase the lot coverage beyond what it is now? Even though they were given the variance.
I would not recommend that
Because that's
because
already-
they
it's
have
already
the
approved.
entitlement to up to 91% existing.
I think because it was already approved, we may not like or would not want to approve a new construction that was going to be over 85%. That would be against our rules and our zoning and our standards, et cetera. But in this case, we did not make that decision. This decision was made before. So we are not really.
And for me, at least on my side, I'm clear. The wine room, we already approved that. So even though we didn't know this background information before, for me, the wine room, we've already said somehow in our mind, we might not have known everything, but we have kind of intrinsically said, hey, this is something I think we could approve. And I feel like I'm okay with that. Kitchen, okay, now that for me is the thing.
And for me, I'm okay with the kitchen because it's already asphalt back there anyway. So we're not increasing anything in terms of lot usage. It's already being used. So to me, it's already been approved by somebody else, another board, another authority previous to this.
Well, and the 91%, we're stuck with. That was a decision made by us, even though us was maybe not there at the time. It's the building for that usage size variance that we have to worry about today. And that's what's giving me heartburn. Although I do appreciate your presentation very much. And that has given me color to the issue.
And to add to that, even though the lot coverage may not change, the building mass does change.
That's exactly what is giving me a problem.
Don't
Yes.
approve. I'm trying to think. Would there be a vehicle, if we don't approve the waiver, is there a vehicle that the building mass could be increased without coming back to this board?
So if the waiver of the 3,500 gross square foot limitation is not approved tonight, they could still move forward with the structure in the front, everything, as I understand it, except for this additional kitchen space. Because that 3,500 gross square foot use-specific limitation for eating and drinking facilities is not a limitation on structure. It's agnostic as to whether that is structured space or outdoor space.
Okay. I'm looking for a way, because I think we all want to approve the dining, okay? That's my sense. We all want to approve the dining. The challenge is the building getting too big? Because it's not just the dining, it's a corner here, it's a corner there, and your building is really grown. Even before you owned it, you can tell it's grown as a series of accretions. And it just seems if we could stop, it just doesn't seem fair to other applicants that we restrict. Is there a logical way to do that? And maybe it's not possible.
Well, I don't want to put words in the applicant's mouth, but I'm interpreting, at least my understanding of what he's saying, is that if the board did not approve the waiver tonight to exceed the 3,500 square feet, he would move forward with everything else except for that additional kitchen space. And so he'd be able to get those benefits even without the approval of the waiver if that waiver is a sticking point for the board. If he later then wants to come back for this additional kitchen space, that would be, he'd have to request the waiver again and do a separate application.
You just have to make sure that the wine room is in this original one, right?
Well, it doesn't matter. He can do with his 3,500 square feet or whatever it is as he pleases. If he wants the wine room in there, then
Then we would have to take it out of the patio, right? Then we would
yeah,
change
I mean,
something
he can shuffle how he wants. I mean, he could make the entire patio into a kitchen if he wanted to. That's what we're approving, but.
Yeah, but then we'd be the preliminary, then you take it out outdoor dining, and then it would change what it would look like outside. You have to tear up the patio.
Right, yeah, other than the aesthetics, right. But if we, right, the waiver just refers to the usage, the dining establishment usage, what he does with it inside once he's given or not given that waiver.
I get that.
He could make the entire place a wine room. It just,
Right.
But it changes what we looked at on the preliminary plan.
Well, yeah,
Because it would change.
right,
It's gonna-
right.
it's
It would
gonna
change.
Yeah, yeah.
He's going to come back for the final development plan, so it could change. Well, how does that sound as a kind of compromise? Because it sounds like the wine room would be possible, the patio would be possible.
Can I ask a question? You had mentioned that the city is required, the building department or the city, some office in the city is requiring the two areas to be connected. Is that why the hyphen's going in?
That's correct. So.
Okay, because that's a sticking point for me.
I originally wanted just to build like a pergola or structure outside, not attached to the
Sure.
building, which would help me out a lot. And the city said, well, you can't have a structure outside that's more than 25% of the original square foot of the building. So my patio now, it's 4,000, it would be 1,000.
Right.
It'd be a little box out there and it'd be terrible.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're requiring me though to make it a contiguous structure, which opens, again, it's going to cost a lot more for me to rip off the face of the building and connect the two.
Right.
But, I mean, yeah.
And that allows the applicant ultimately to get more structure on the site because he otherwise was limited to 25% because the other would be treated as an accessory structure.
Okay.
And so by integrating it into the primary, it's all one primary structure and can take up the footprint of the entire existing eating and drinking facility.
Got it.
I'm not so much opposed to the waiver either. It's impervious and I'm not sure we're changing the mass so much. So.
All right, well, why don't we work through, there's these, we're going to come back to that, but you want to start working through the recommendations? Okay, yeah, all right. So how do we feel about the parking plan, the loss of 2 spaces? Everybody okay with that?
No problem.
Yeah, that's fine.
No problem.
And the roof pitch?
Okay, well, that's
Yeah,
one thing we just talked about earlier.
I think we-
Apparently that was an
we were
earlier
given the
discussion. so-
option for a gabled roof that was closer to code compliance, and we felt like, the earlier board felt like.
Too
this
big.
was
Yeah,
better
we're already fussing about
Okay.
size, so yeah.
The hardy plank shouldn't be an issue. We've approved this waiver for other people. Okay. So Sean, you're proposing to approve the building size waiver.
Well, we have to just think, because I'm not, well, I'm seeing, as we're gonna have it's gonna end up in a
I mean,
different spot, yeah.
You can always just, somebody make a motion to approve the building size waiver and see if it gets the votes. I mean, if it gets 3 votes in the affirmative, it gets it. If not,
Because we know if it doesn't pass, you still can go forward from what you've told us. So, okay. So we'll come back around to that one. Handle it. Okay, let's go through the conditions. And I'd like your input to Mr. Barnum, Mr. Luck, as we go through these conditions to make sure you understand them and you're okay with them if we approve them. So the first one deals with the encroachment. Language, that one, okay? Okay. And this may be item 2. Maybe, how's item 2?
Number 2 is, so we're talking about the south side walkway area that we use as a server alleyway. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Why don't we clarify that again, Sarah?
Yes, I'd be happy to. On the site plan, the lot line actually dives south and around that encroachment, and that
Yeah.
is not correct.
So that area is just used by my employees to go from the bar to the patio to service it now. It's not really
I think,
no.
but I think,
The issue is that it is not owned by this property owner. It's right of way for Wing Hill Lane.
yeah, so it would need to be resolved with the city.
Yeah, so that's something maybe then they would approach me like the winery, that maybe I'd have to purchase that part of that land. Is that?
Either, I'm not going to negotiate for the city.
Or is it just that you need him to correct the plot plan?
I think that number 2 is just about the line work. Number 1 is really about how you resolve the encroachment, whether that be purchase, whether that be just an encroachment agreement.
Got work with the city on okay.
Right.
Yeah. Fine.
1 is work with the city. 2 is once you figure that out, the line work be corrected on the plan, right?
Okay.
And item 3 is, if you were to go ahead with the kitchen mechanical addition, it needs to conform to the setback.
Okay.
Which is going to reduce the square footage there a little bit. Okay, this is more of an engineering item 4.
Yeah.
That's something, you can expand on this. We're not,
Oh, yeah, our civil engineer has been working with the engineering staff at the city. Apparently we wanted, there's a sanitary manhole in the alley real close. So we thought it'd be very simple just to connect into that. Well, they didn't want us to connect into that and I have no idea why that's an issue with them. They want us to go through the building for the sanitary. So we're looking at boring through that walkway underneath there to get to the manhole that's on Greg's property. But we don't know if it's a grease interceptor, so we're in a process of trying to figure that out.
And I think that's a process beyond us. I think we're just
Right.
putting it in here.
Just so you understand.
So, yeah, I understand what you're dealing with. Okay, and this is item 5 is just an engineering issue.
Same thing.
I mean, item 6 is just, I think some documentation on the plan regarding a return to existing
Yes,
conditions.
yeah.
Okay.
No, it's the landscape, just restoring it. It's
Yeah,
good.
get to it, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay. Item 7,
that's the walkway in the back.
So number 7, so this is city property that they want me to spend $40,000 on a walkway. Don't think that's fair. I don't even think it's even fair to even bring up. That's not going to be my walkway. That's in Darby Street. That's other pedestrians walking and using it. And I strongly oppose that proposition.
And I believe that's going to narrow that street down.
Now, there are a lot of pedestrians back there. Really what the city should do is build a crosswalk from the Darby Street parking lot. Because people do that, there's no crosswalk there, but to actually ask me to build a brick sidewalk on their property and spend the money doesn't seem fair to me. One of the things I'd like to do, I'm going to approach the city, other parts of the city on that Wing Hill Alley is asphalt. The city has spent other monies at the strip centers that are just to the south of me. They built that courtyard, the front area. They spent a lot of money on brick and sidewalks and so forth. Really, the city should probably, in conjunction with what I'm doing down there, come down and replace that pavement to a nice, because there are a lot of pedestrians, not just my customers, who walk down that asphalt alleyway. That used to be our valet access years ago when the city closed that down. So the city should work with me in improving that side street. And also, if they want that sidewalk in the back, they should also pay for that as well.
It's kind of open-ended. It says work with staff. It's not, we're not telling you, somebody else, another board or body told you you're going to pay. That's
Okay.
not what this is saying. This is just saying.
I interpreted it as that I was going to be responsible, work with staff. I was going to be responsible for, I think it'd be a great addition back there. I'm not in a position to also pay that bill as well.
No, I understand. My interpretation is we're not telling you in this that you need to pay for
Okay.
that. We're just saying you'll continue to talk to the city about it.
Got it.
Okay, and the item 8 is asking for more detail about the shutters. That's probably not an issue for you. And then other, okay, landscape plan. Okay, updated drawing. How about the item 10? The color of the roof.
Oh, that's not a problem. We generally like to use a lighter color TPO just for energy reasons.
Yeah,
But
I thought it was a
but
good.
that's not a problem. We can change that. In fact, I thought we had, maybe I missed it, but
I thought it was a good idea, but for the same reasons.
yeah, and the white, with the trees
reduce
around there make it
energy
dirty.
consumption.
Dublin's been a very, very strong advocate for greening of Dublin. So is there a lighter color that could be used that would be within?
There's a very light beige. Staff is concerned about the views from the public realm, even on the sidewalk, because you can, as you see from the elevations, you can see those roofs, and also from the second story of Bry High and any other second stories adjacent.
Board members?
Unless engineering has a way to, something that is more energy efficient. White is probably pretty bright. I'd have to say it's probably, but certainly most energy efficient.
If we could find a gray color, would that be a compromise? A lighter gray?
Yeah, can we change the wording of 10, Sarah, to be
Yeah.
maybe a little less specific to medium bronze and rock brown, or maybe change it to earth tones or something, or just not bright white?
Okay, and then,
We can work with Sarah to come up with a solution. Be happy to.
okay, and then item, and you don't have to put I have a copy here, Sarah, so you don't have to get those right back up. The hardy plank will be smooth.
Not a problem.
Okay, good. The dumpster doors we do.
We may not have dumpster doors anymore.
Well, let's say hypothetically you did. Are you okay with
If,
the language?
if we have dumpster doors, I've never seen self-closing dumpster doors. I don't know if that's something that actually exists. I asked Craig before the meeting when they actually empty those, and it's early in the morning.
It's always like around 5 a.m.
Yeah.
So operationally, I mean, I think his people could make sure they're closed.
Yeah, and I think that the idea here was that these would be sliding doors, so they don't open up obviously in the street. So if the dumpster comes in the morning at 5 o'clock and we arrive at 8 and those doors are open, we would just close them. I mean, I don't think that would be, it's in our best interest to make sure that we close them.
This clause, is this something that is required of the larger commercial projects outside of the district? Is this where this came from?
I do not have enough experience with projects outside the district to say that. The language in the code, our code for the historic district, is very clear to say self-closing.
Does anyone else have self-closing that we could go look at? I mean,
It says screen walls.
They haven't, it hasn't come before the board, the other commercial
Yeah.
projects. I don't recall having, and we haven't seen many of the scale you're doing.
I can certainly look into that and then let you know, Mike.
okay. Yeah. And, you know, the guys that do, you know, drive those trucks, they're not real careful with stuff and, you know.
Yeah.
So operationally, I'm not sure how that works, but we'll work. We'll try to get there.
Should we say coordinate that with staff, maybe change the language in that?
I think the text should be changed a little.
Happy to do it.
Okay, the 13, okay, matte finish for the windows and doors.
Sure.
Mhm.
So we're not requiring something of you that you weren't planning on doing. We're not requiring something of you that you weren't planning on doing anyway.
This is sample.
Okay, okay.
So I wasn't sure.
No, thank you. How about the lighting? The cutoffs, but also reducing the number in the front?
Yeah. That particular fixture, I know that if we use a 60-watt bulb, it meets the lumens requirement. But yeah, I'll work with Sarah to take a look at that light. We need to switch out to a similar fixture. I've got one in mind that I don't think you'll see any of the illumination, so.
How about the second part of this where you've been asked to remove?
It's fine. You know, the reason we were doing that was to put a little bit of light, you know, on the handicap walkway and the outdoor dining areas. We wanted it to be very low. We'd probably even put it on a dimmer no matter what. So I mean, if the board feels strongly about that, we'll just do it on the brick columns. But I think, you know, there was a purpose to trying to get some low level lighting at the walkways.
If there are only 60-watt bulbs in there, it's not going to be a lot of light.
It's not going to be a lot of light.
What was the staff's concern, the look of all of those fixtures? Was it the amount of light?
It was concern about the look of the number of fixtures, as you say, and I couldn't find any legible information about the wattage, so it was very hard to tell what that was going to look like.
Okay. How do we feel about that?
How many brick?
There are only 2 brick.
There's only two, just on
brick
the,
piers.
on the ends, huh? Feels like it could be dark.
Well, that's if there is going to be some seating out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
mean, for me, it has to meet the cutoff and the lumens. I think that's clear, but I think if we don't have them a little closer together, it's gonna be.
Yeah, we initially had those long light fixtures that, and then we didn't think those were appropriate, so we went to more of a kind of a modified gooseneck, I call it.
So you can see on the elevation.
Yeah.
Those are.
So those black pit, where are they on the elevations? The black squares?
Yep.
Right, so there's 5 on 2 elevations and looks like 3 on
Right.
the south side.
When you start looking at all the elevations, it does, like, if you looked at this from the corner, which is how you more likely see the building, it will be a lot of lights marching in, a lot of
Mhm.
fixtures marching in both directions.
You think that's not good?
Yeah, it may seem a little busy,
Oh.
although, well, the rendering helps. Yeah.
Maybe just change the language to something like work with staff to, I don't want to say make it look less gaudy, but to reduce brightness or, just make it more squishy so that at a final plan, we can see what it's gonna.
It keeps going off. On the east side, I'm looking at that elevation. If we did the 3 in the center and took the end ones off, we could put the end ones on the brick. That would space them out a little bit.
We could change the language to just say, work with the staff to reduce the number of exterior fixtures.
I'd be happy with that.
As shown in green.
Whoa. Okay.
From your brain to Sarah's keyboard.
Okay, let's see what you do with the next one. All right.
Personally, I like the lighting. Light it up so I can see where I'm going.
Okay, 15.
Yeah, it's yours. It's the chairs.
Oh, boy.
Um,
Furniture.
What do you feel, how do you feel about that?
I mean, I'm flexible. We've never really, I don't know how many patios ask permission on furniture down there. And so,
The ones you've cited with enclosures have brought their furniture here.
it's in our best interest to make sure that we purchase, I mean, my clientele, very nice chairs and tables and so forth. So I don't have a problem working with them. I think our furniture is great the way it is now. We can make improvements. So
Is the concern the variety, and you want?
Yes, on one of the photographs we received, there were 3 different tabletops.
And you want more continuity?
Yes.
It's not an issue of quality.
and that's, right now we put white tablecloths on all those tables during service, so they're not even exposed. Now that could change, but being fine dining, and then we can enclose, obviously put a roof on it, putting that white tablecloth out there really enhances the atmosphere out there. So it wouldn't matter what the tabletops would be. So I can work with staff and figure that out. We don't want 3 different or 4 different looking tables out there, obviously.
The tables would all be the same.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all in plan the same. I measured them. They're correct in the plan. I have the measurements they're like 2 feet by 3 feet. So there was not inconsistent tables.
I think there may have been a photograph. It wasn't so much your plan. It was, I think.
There was a photograph and it was stated that these tables would be reused in the patio enclosure. And since the windows open to the public realm, that's where we get involved in looking at the furniture.
There would be inconsistent tables in the patio, inside.
I think the goal is to have everything the same. Well, the outside undercover, not undercover, you're not going to put tablecloths on those.
Well, I think the plan we do that now. But I'm not saying that wouldn't change. We'll work with the staff on this.
This is pretty vague. It's giving.
It is, and it's possible since it's interior, I may change some furniture in there and do more, maybe even permanent booths or banquettes that have, something on it. to make that atmosphere a little nicer. And then maybe the tables that are closer to the windows that might be exposed to the elements might be a little different. So that's, I don't know in a restaurant if all the tables look exactly alike are a good idea. Sometimes having a little contrast. So I'll work with them and I'm sure we can figure this out.
Okay. And the last one, at least for the time being, is that one okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can clear. Yeah, it was our intent to paint the garage to match the other colors.
Okay, so I think we're ready to vote.
And Mr. Chair, my suggestion would be that as you go through the voting to, well, you have the parking plan, but then when you get to the waivers, move them and vote on them separately. And then if needed, as a result of the outcome of vote on any of those waivers, we can include any appropriate conditions in the preliminary development plan approval so that if a waiver isn't approved, that they have to come back at FDP reflecting the lack of that waiver.
Okay. Okay, let's start with the easy one. Is there a motion to approve the parking plan?
I'll move to approve the parking plan.
I'll second.
Ms. Damiser,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Let's start with the easy ones. Is there a motion to approve waiver for the roof pitch?
I'll move to approve the roof pitch waiver for 1/4 to 12.
I'll second.
Ms. Damiser,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the waiver for the hardy plank?
So moved to approve the waiver of the hardy plank.
Second.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Ms. Damiser.
Yes.
All right. Is there a motion to approve, and this will put it on the floor so we vote on it, to approve the building size waiver? Let's have a motion second and then a brief review of the implications of passing and not passing it. So is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the building size waiver.
I'm going to second that motion.
Okay. Just an explanation or clarifications now. So if we approve it, plan is submitted, is accepted. The way it's been explained is the only implication, if we don't approve it, is that essentially the mechanical room expansion wouldn't fit.
They're going to be limited to 70, whatever the number was, 7,000.
200.
Right.
256
7,256 gross square feet.
That'll be the size. It won't, then everybody can decide.
7,841 square feet,
Yes,
which is still less than the
91%.
previous 91% approved.
Okay. Is that?
Just to clarify, if we don't build a mechanical room addition, that does not reduce it by 600 square feet. So it's still over.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so a waiver is still required, but just for not as much square footage.
If you went for the wine
If you went for the wine room, that's right. If we went for the wine room.
Okay.
As drawn now. Mr. Boggs, looks like you're going to introduce something.
Well, because the wine room, is what, 200 square
Around two.
feet? Something like that. They would still have, right, they would still have all of their existing total square footage of the existing building and the existing patio space. And they could, if the waiver is not approved, what they would have to do is revise their plan at final development plan so that that whole eating and drinking facility did not exceed the existing total of 7,256 square feet. Now, if they can do that and have the bump out for the wine room, then so be it. Whereas if the waiver is approved, then what's in front of you, you know that what you would get is what's in front of you tonight. Right.
I couldn't hear.
Sarah, what were you saying?
They could spend that square footage however they wanted in their programming in the
So we're gonna have to reduce
facility.
somewhere else.
All right, is that clear?
Al, I'm clear.
Yeah, I understand the issue. It's just how I'm gonna.
Okay, all right. So we all
So
feel like we
let's just make
understand,
sure
we
we're-
understand the
we're-
issue.
We said approval of the waiver. Okay, clear.
So,
That was the motion,
That's
as
a
I
motion.
understand
Yep,
it.
got it. Yep.
okay. So are we ready to vote? Any more discussion? Okay. Lori, could you call the roll? No.
Ms. Damisser,
No.
Ms. Cooper,
I'm voting yes.
and Mr. Cutter.
Yes.
Unfortunately, because they're two, since.
Our
we-
fifth
we
member
have a
isn't here,
majority,
so we don't have a tiebreaker.
Okay. All right. Let's,
But that means it doesn't pass. But can they bring it back? Probably should have tabled it.
We'll look at that. And I mean, the alternative would be we can reconsider that vote, take it off and see if they want to table it to.
Till the FDP final development plan.
Right. Now, the issue then would be if it's not granted when they bring the final development plan back, they're going to have a final development plan.
and there's no guarantee that the
And so then they'd
absent
have to come
members
back again.
is going to support the affirmative vote. So
Right.
that's the risk you take. So.
What do you want to do? It's unfortunate because I think, as Craig said, that, we've been trying to clean up that back area. It's a nasty area and that was an opportunity to get the dumpsters enclosed, get a lot of that messy stuff cleaned up, get landscaping in there and make it look a lot nicer. So, if we can table it, I think that's the best thing we can do. And that way it'll give us some time to study our alternatives.
Okay. So, but understand that means that if it comes back, if you bring back this as your final development plan and the waiver doesn't pass then you'd have to come back with a revised, you'd have to table your final development plan to adjust to reflect that the waiver wasn't granted. So that is an additional meeting.
Okay. You good?
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
I understand.
So then somebody on the board who voted yes would move to reconsider. Anybody can second that motion, and then we'll have a vote on reconsideration.
And we've had members absent number of meetings. So there's no guarantee that the meeting that you choose will have all five present. So I'm just throwing out all the potential, pitfalls. So just.
They're going to find out your vacation schedule.
So comment on a personal one. I am dressed as a golfer today for a reason. I drove my 14-year-old to Pinehurst yesterday morning, 8 hours, and flew back here just for this meeting. There was a delay in Atlanta, so I had plenty of time to go home and change. There was a delay, and I had to come straight here, and I leave tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I'm probably 4 hours of sleep to caddy for my son in 95-degree heat. So it's disappointing our fifth person wasn't here, but I went to great lengths to be here tonight to, try to get approval for this thing that's, this time is not our friend. It's my architectural fees are probably double what they normally should be. And we've been working on this for a long time. And I'm very disappointed that there's been 2 no votes on this, on what we've gone through and what we're experiencing right now. I mean, time is.
The no vote is not, I hope you understand, you can go ahead with the majority of your project.
Okay.
I mean, the no vote is not, it's not eliminating the dining room. It's not eliminating the vast majority of your project. So,
but we're gonna have to make some changes, right? I mean, we're potentially gonna have to then spend time and money now making some potentially changes that
but you've got a lot of work to do anyways to create the final development plan. I mean, there is so much engineering and maybe those things are already in the works, but in terms of documentation and things we need, I mean, there's a significant amount of work yet to do. So,
So the question for me is, do you want to table it? Because I voted yes, so I just want to hear.
Well, if you give me a sec, I just want to respond to that last remark. You came in asking us to approve a variance. It would have been much easier to approve if you brought something to us that was already compliant. And that's the problem. So the jump is proposing something that's a variance, and that makes it difficult. And we've struggled tonight with that. And it really was a struggle. And the project itself is good. It really is. It's just that there are certain aspects of it that are just too big of a leap.
your building mass compared to the other things we've improved, and that's the challenge that we're dealing with, is being fair to everybody. And the building mass is getting so big compared to other projects that.
So not to cut the thing, but for me, I mean, I just want to try to cut for me, just trying to decide how you want to move forward.
Downtown historic Dublin, when you've got massive structures down there, a lot bigger than mine. Again, it's just.
But in the historic district, that's the issue. We're trying to create a consistency in the historic district.
Well, that's why the scale has been changed.
This is massive.
We had that gabled roof with the original structure, and we
Right.
changed that. So this is all, we've made significant changes to date to try to get this in front of you. And we've definitely, this isn't the plan we would have come with. We would have come with something else, but we've taken obviously your comments from previous meetings and made those changes.
Do you want to table?
That's the question. Really, is just trying to. Yeah, you, go ahead.
So if the board were to approve the preliminary development plan, what I propose, if the vote on the waiver stands, is to just have an additional condition saying that at final development plan, will reflect a total gross square footage of 7,256
Right, that makes sense.
square feet.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think we'd like to request that we do table
Okay,
the motion, and that'll give us an opportunity to study this.
okay.
So since I'm a yes, then I could, then,
A yes vote can move to reconsider, anyone can second, and
Okay.
anyone can vote in favor of the motion to reconsider.
got it. So I'll move to reconsider the vote on the building size waiver.
I'll second.
Ms. Damiser,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
and Mr. Cotter.
Yes.
Now we move to table, correct?
Now you move to
Okay,
table
I will
the
move to
waiver.
table the vote on the building size waiver.
I'll second.
Yes.
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 So we need another condition in there, or we just?
All right, now, approval of the preliminary development plan with the conditions, but we have a plan that's in flux.
Well, if the goal is to put them in a position to come back for a final development plan vote and a vote on this waiver, then I would just add as a condition of final development plan approval, they will have to obtain the building size or the eating and drinking facility size waiver.
Either a waiver or a compliant building.
Or a compliant building, whichever they come back with.
Okay.
And then that gives you flexibility.
Correct. That's why we want to do.
So is that a part of the motion or becoming our last?
That would be a condition 17.
Okay, all right. You don't have that drafted yet?
Exactly. 10:15.
Gotcha.
Okay. Do you understand that last condition? Okay,
Yes.
okay. Everybody okay with that? All right, so is there a motion to approve the preliminary development plan with the conditions?
And might I add, excuse me, as modified here at the meeting?
Yeah, good point. All
Thank
right,
you.
I move to approve the preliminary development plan as proposed with the conditions proposed by staff and as amended at this meeting.
I'll second the motion.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Damiser.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for
Okay.
your time.
All right, Sarah, are there any communications?
Can I ask a kind of very general question?
Yes.
If the issue with the encroachment on the south side of the property resulted in them acquiring more property, would that then reduce the percentage? Are we still in the same feeling about the percentage.
Are you talking about the lot coverage?
Mm-hmm. The lot coverage being at 91%, but the use coverage or the use area would not be,
Wouldn't be affected.
okay.
Yeah, I don't think it would be affected.
I'm usually really good with math, but
The
this one
lot
has been a
coverage-
little twisted to me.
Like both your numerator and your denominator on the lot coverage would change. So I think it would be a wash.
But lot coverage, remember, is a totally separate issue from building size.
Right,
That's where we're running into our confusion, I think.
right.
One has to do with imperviability, the other has to has to do with usability,
Right.
usage group, yeah.
And one has to do with the current code and the other has more of a tie to what was granted before. At least that is my feeling on
In
it.
reverse order, correct.
Right. Sorry, it's late. It's
I
now
totally understand, I
10:20.
just want to make sure you're right.
Okay, Sarah.
All right, thank you very much. We have proposed a joint city council and board and commission meeting on the 31st of August. Can I check everybody's availability for that day?
Vacation.
What day of the week is that?
Wednesday.
The Wednesday before Labor Day.
Okay. Yeah, I should be fine.
Okay. Okay. And then while you're all checking your calendars, in August, this is just a heads up. I've asked engineering and transportation and mobility to come and just give you a brief presentation about the South High utility work. And this is to move the utility poles and lines off of South High Street and onto, I've just lost the name of it. It's one block over. Yeah, west, exactly. And they're just going to explain a little bit about the project, just so that you're aware of it. And then Transportation and Mobility would like to come and talk about the scooter program and to explain about what's going on with that, just kind of FYI.
Okay, good.
And I have nothing else to report.
All right.
In the August meeting, yes. Yeah. Don't know yet. Yes.
The
Okay.
hearing for us, though, is the Wednesday before.
Correct. That is correct. So we have 3 yeses?
Yes.
Okay, okay, all right, perfect.
Yes, I'll make it official, yes.
All righty.
All right, I think we're adjourned.